Good morning and welcome to this day 2 of the 2022 Save Green, Be Green conference. We want to welcome you to the second day, and we want to thank you for those of you who attended yesterday's day 1 session. We had an outstanding day that we ended with a really cool networking event over at the amazing nonprofit Revision. And it was cool to learn more about them and what Mariana is doing over there. It is my pleasure to introduce a former city colleague of mine. She was a great city public servant that's now crossed over to the other side to corporate work. But we so appreciated the work she did as a public servant for the city, and she's now the area manager of community and local government affairs with Xcel Energy, and she's coming to us from Chicago. So please help us welcome Ms. Grace Lopez Ramirez.
Thank you so much, Will. That was such a warm welcome. I appreciate it. Good morning, neighbors. It is such a pleasure to be here again with you all. As Will said, my name is Grace Lopez Ramirez, and I serve my Denver neighbors as the Senior Manager for Community and Local Government Affairs for Xcel Energy. My work is directly tied to the work that Denver's Climate Office is doing, the work the Office of Neighborhood Nonprofit Engagement is doing. So we are so proud to partner with the City and County of Denver to bring you this Save Green, Be Green conference. As partners in green energy, we work collaboratively to meet our shared goals of a carbon-free future. So I hope that you enjoy your second day of your conference. I'm so sorry I'm not able to be in Denver for it, but I am glad that you guys are continuing this wonderful tradition of a conference that really celebrates the wonderful work and programs that we work collaboratively on, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Grace. We really appreciate that. And for those who don't know, this whole party is made possible with funding from Xcel Energy. And so we so appreciate their partnership and their support for getting this work done. A few housekeeping notes as we get ready to transition into today's workshop. A couple of things. There'll be links sent to you to kind of direct you to the workshops that you signed up for. At the end of each of those workshops, there'll be a Q&A session that will allow you to ask the panelists questions. And then just remember that if you look down at the bottom of your screen and you see right next to the chat function, there's a Q&A function. That's how you get your questions asked. Because they'll be placed directly in front of the facilitator for that workshop, and they'll be able to ask respond to your questions in the order that they came in. There'll also be, just keep in mind, there'll be an end of day panel, and yesterday was a outstanding example of why that matters, because at the end of each day, we really want folk to take the time to kind of reflect on kind of what they learned, what they were able to share, or just something new that they didn't know. And so we really want to encourage you to take part in that end of day discussion. Again, in a few minutes, you'll get a link sent to you with your particular chats that you signed up in. And just remember that if you have any kind of technical difficulties, just remember to, you can private message tech support and they'll be able to work things out for you. So again, thank you for joining us for this 2022 conference and this day 2. And we hope you'll have a great time, and we'll see you at the end of the day.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to session A1, Expanding Climate Action Benefits Through Electrification of Buildings. This session will run through approximately 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. It is concurrent with session A2. Today we have 2 presenters speaking with us today. And first we'll have Sharon J. She is with the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. She'll be presenting Energized Denver, upcoming requirements for energy use and reduction, as well as pilot programs. Following Sharon, we'll have Kristen May, and she is with Excel Energy. She'll be presenting Excel electrification offerings. We will go through questions at the end of our question and answer time. During our question and answer time, excuse me. For the Q&A, we will go through the questions sent in the chat in the order we received them during the presentations. Once we go through those questions, we will open up the discussion to all. We ask that when you ask a question, you do clarify which presenter the question is for. Sharon, if you'd like to take it away.
Greetings, everyone. So our third speaker, Jeff, had a family emergency today, so I am taking over his slides, and I hope I do a good job at presenting his information, but we wanted to make sure you had all of the information that was intended for today's session so that you can always ask questions later. So I am going to be talking about Energized Denver. So our Energized Denver Ordinance was voted into law in November 2021. So our office, which we call CASR, if you haven't heard the acronym yet, is furiously working to put together all of the things that are needed to actually make the ordinance work and be implemented. So that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today. So the Energized Denver Ordinance is broken up into 3 sections. The first section covers benchmarking, and it talks about all buildings over 25,000 square feet must submit energy benchmarking data on an annual basis. Then we have new performance requirements for all buildings over 5,000 square feet, and we'll talk about that in great detail. And then we have a new electrification requirements that are going to be folded into the building code over the next 4 to 5 years. And so we'll go into all of the detail on all of these different sections of the ordinance. So a little bit of background, there was a task force last year that was charged with implementing an energy efficiency ordinance and looking at strategic electrification with the goal that all existing buildings and homes achieve net zero energy by 2040. It's quite a big goal, and this is how we're going to be implementing it over the next decade or so. So commercial and multifamily buildings are 49% of our greenhouse gas emissions. That means that we have to do something about them. 82% of that square footage are buildings that are larger than 25,000 square feet, which is why our ordinance focuses very heavily on those buildings. All of the work that we're doing has huge benefits for building owners and the occupants, especially when we talk about the avoided social cost of carbon. It looks like we're going to have over $1 billion in benefits over time as buildings improve their energy use and lower the cost of operations. So some additional benefits that people can see, building owners get an improved return on investment. We have improved building stock in our city. There's higher property values, reduced energy bills and cost of operations for the building owners and the tenants, and improved indoor and outdoor air quality. So let's talk a little bit about benchmarking. We've been doing it for about 6 years now, since 2016. This is about buildings 25,000 square feet and larger. They submit their energy information through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is an EPA program. And then it's due June 1st every single year. So if you are a building that's over 25,000 square feet and you haven't submitted yet, you need to get it in the next couple of weeks so you don't get penalties. If you're interested in looking up the information that has been submitted, you can go to our energizeddenver.org website and look at all of the data from all of the buildings. So one of the more important things, which is going to reflect on the next section that I'm going to talk about, is to make sure that your benchmarking is actually correct, to make sure that you have the right building type, that if you have more than one building type in your building, let's say you have an office building where the first floor is retail and the rest of the floor is office, you need to make sure that it's reflected correctly in your benchmarking data, because it's really, really important to the performance requirements that I'm going to talk about next. And you'll realize why as I start talking about it. So there is currently a data correction application available on our website. So if you think your information might be wrong, you may have submitted it, but you think you need to make some adjustments, just go ahead and go to the website or call into our help desk and they will help you make that data correction. So now I'm going to talk about the performance requirements, and the goal of this part of the ordinance is to do a 30% improvement in energy performance across all of the covered buildings by 2030. It doesn't mean that each individual building needs to do a 30% improvement, but that we're going for this overarching goal. So what we did to make this happen is we created energy performance targets for 2030. So this applies to all buildings 25,000 square feet and up. We use site energy use intensity, which I'll explain that a little bit more on the next slide. We set the targets at the 85th, 15th percentile. So what that means is that 85% of the buildings are going to have to make some type of improvement, but it depends on how far away you are from that target EUI score. So if you're an office, the target EUI is 48.3, hotels is 61, multifamily housing is 44, and so on. If you have a mixed use building, kind of like what I was talking about in the data correction slide, then you will actually have a mixed target. So let's say you have a building with a restaurant on the ground floor and then multifamily housing above it, you're going to get a mixed use target of the 194 and the 44 mixed together based on the square footage. So that's why the data in Portfolio Manager is so important. So site energy use intensity, if you've never heard of this, this is about what energy is being used in your building. For example, like for heating the space, any pumps and fans, air conditioning, lighting, creating your hot water, and any other plug loads, all of those get combined into an energy consumption score, which is turned into this thing called kBTU per year. So you take the kilowatt hours from electricity, you take the therms from the natural gas, combine them together into a kBTU per year number, and then divide it by your gross floor area or your square feet. And that's where you get that EUI score. Then what we're also going to allow in the performance requirements is that if you have on-site or off-site solar, you're going to get a credit off of your site EUI to be able to reach the performance requirements. So to help people towards their 2030 goal, improving the energy efficiency of your building is not something you can do in a one-year little project. It's something you have to take care of over time, because sometimes projects take a little bit longer. You run into some issues. You've got to do some behavior training of the occupants that are in the building. You have to train your facility managers and your operators to be able to maintain the building properly. So it takes some time. So what we've done is created interim targets for 2024 and 2027 to kind of help you get along that path. So what we did was we took everybody's baseline energy performance in 2019 and then drew a straight line from there to 2030 and then created these targets in between. And so you can see for this chart in Office A, their site EUI was 100 in 2019. They have interim targets of 76 and 62 in those two interim target years, and then they have to get down to a 48 in 2030. We also want everybody to maintain their targets. We certainly don't want people to hit that 48 in 2030 and then go backwards and not be operating their buildings properly. So we are going to be doing maintenance targets where everybody needs to hit that target and then stay there. And this chart kind of shows the minimums. This is what we're regulating as a city. So if you wanted to move faster, You could, if you wanted to move slightly slower, depending on the reasons, you actually could too. But this is the minimum levels. So if you want to get down to, let's say, a 30, or like for hotels, it's a 66. If you want to get down to a 60 or a 50, because you're going to save more money, you could certainly do that. What we're saying is that you just have to stay below this minimum number. You could always do better if you choose. So we are going to have some alternate compliance options. We are currently developing the procedures for a target adjustment to make sure that we are accounting for variations in your building, how it's being operated. For example, instead of being open 12 hours a day, you're open 24 hours for a particular reason. If you have a particular building characteristic that makes reaching that site EUI target, we will be able to adjust for that. We are also going to be offering a timeline adjustment. So depending on certain reasons, just not because you want to, that is not a valid reason. But if you have some financing schedules that you have to work with, you're designing a major renovation, there's a whole list of reasons that we're working on to be able to adjust the timeline. And then we're going to have a prescriptive option. So if your building is between 25,000 and 100,000 square feet, to satisfy the interim targets, so this is only 2024 and 2027, if you are 70% electrified or have 90% LED lighting, we could say that you're okay with those interim targets, but you still have to hit that 2030 target. We are doing feedback sessions next week and the week after to actually tell people about these procedures that we've been developing, and then getting some feedback. What do you think? Do we need to add something? Are we missing something? That kind of thing. So if the slides are not distributed to folks, because I have a lot of links in the slides, you could go to our Energized Denver Hub website and click on regulations and go to the performance requirements, and that's where the feedback session links are going to be. So here's one example. The Golden Spike Apartments, this is one that actually worked with Energy Outreach Colorado and is an affordable housing or serves low-income residents. It was built in 1974. It's 123,000 square feet. They actually did a number of things in 2017 and 2018, like upgrading their lights to LEDs. They did a big building tune-up because they have a central boiler system, replaced their windows, did some behavioral work with the residents to make sure everybody understood how to reduce their plug loads. And they ended up saving 58% in their energy savings between 2017 and 2019. So as you see on the chart, they would have been at a 73 and needed to reduce down to a 44 to hit their target. But now, since they already meet the target, all they need to do is maintain it. Now they're in the 30s right now on their site EUI. Doesn't mean they have to maintain a 30. What they need to do is just stay more energy efficient than a 44. So they can kind of vary in the 30s, but make sure that they don't go above that 44. So we also are going to have a small building performance requirement, and this is a little bit more prescriptive. It's not based on your annual performance. And this is buildings between 5,000 and just under 25,000 square feet. And this is where you have to perform either a lighting upgrade where you've installed all LEDs, or you install solar that's enough to meet at least 20% of your annual energy usage. And you can see on the right-hand side, the compliance deadlines are based on the size of the building. So if you happen to have one of these buildings, let's say you're 10,000 square feet, and you already have all LEDs, all you have to do is turn in some paperwork and you've actually already met these performance requirements. So let's talk a little bit about support resources. So we have a lot of information right now on our Energized Denver hub. It's denvergov.org/Energized Denver. So if you want to get to that link while we're talking, we have lots of materials, some how-to guides, checklists, that kind of thing. And we're actually in the next couple of months building out a very much larger list of materials and resources and programs to be able to help you with what you're doing. And we are doing some special assistance for under-resourced buildings, or what you'll see on some of these slides when we say URBs. That's our little acronym for under-resourced buildings. And so we're doing some community outreach right now, making sure that we're designing our technical assistance in a way that the folks that are running the under-resourced buildings and living in the under-resourced buildings actually need. And so the plan is to probably by October be releasing a whole suite of technical assistance for the under-resourced buildings to make sure they hit these performance targets. So there is some incentives and financing out there. I would strongly encourage you to look at Excel's programs. They are adding programs. It seems like almost weekly. In fact, they've improved their building assessments or walkthrough over the last couple of weeks. So if you haven't looked at them recently, please go to their website. There are financing programs available. We're going to be running a couple of webinars over the next couple of months to learn more about CPACE financing and the Colorado Clean Energy Fund, which is new. It's kind of like a green bank for the state of Colorado. And then I would encourage you, if you do qualify for assistance through Energy Outreach Colorado, to reach out to them, or even just reach out to them to see whether or not you qualify. They run a lot of the federal programs around weatherization and some other programs. And so they are a fantastic organization to work with. So some immediate next steps for buildings when it comes to the performance requirement. Make sure to go to our website and check out the hub for resources webinars. Look at your portfolio manager benchmarking data and make sure that your square footage and your space use types are in there properly. In March was when we sent out the letters saying exactly what your building's target is. But if you don't know that number, then you can always call in to the Energized Denver hub and they can give you that information. Like I said, check out Excel's energy programs and then really look at their energy assessments. It's where they actually come to your building and look at your building and give you a little bit more customized information than just looking at our resources and our webinars. So our implementation timeline on the performance requirement side of things is that we passed the ordinance, we mailed out everybody's targets, we launched the website, but now we're going to be doing another relaunch of the website probably in October with some additional information. We're doing community outreach right now to design that under-resourced building assistance. We are doing stakeholder engagement, as I mentioned, in the next couple of weeks on our alternate compliance option procedures. We're going to be making some slight adjustments to the rulemaking and releasing the more detailed processes after we do the stakeholder engagement. And then we will be relaunching the whole new suite of resources, the technical guidance, and the support for under-resourced buildings in October. At least that's what we hope our timeline is going to be. This is what it looks like at the moment. So now I'm going to talk about the third part of this. And a little bit of this, some of these slides were the ones that Jeff was going to cover. And so I'll tell you when I can answer questions on a particular slide or if we might have to pass over it because I'm covering his information. So the renewable heating and cooling part of the ordinance, which is also just the electrification and getting off of fossil fuels, is actually going to be implemented through changes to the Denver Building and Fire Code, which is controlled by our Community Planning and Development Group, or CPD. And so we are working with CPD very closely on everything that's going to be happening in the building code and then helping implement incentives and support. But the building code side of it is very much on the CPD side of things. So one of the neat things that is happening is that Xcel Energy has a plan to decarbonize our grid. They have up in the right-hand corner, you'll see a little link. If you just Google Xcel Energy Clean Energy Plan, you can actually look into it into more detail. But their goal is by 2030 to get 80% renewable so that it's powered by 80% solar, wind, a couple of other types of renewables instead of fossil fuels, and then to hit net zero by 2050. And so we're really excited about that. So to make our decarbonization a thing, we actually have to start electrifying the equipment and getting rid of those boilers and some of those natural gas equipment, the fuel oil equipment, that kind of thing that is on our grid. So one of the biggest things that's out there right now are heat pumps. And so heat pumps is a really incredible way to electrify your system and get off of that natural gas. So heat pumps actually move heat instead of creating it. They actually pull it out of the air, out of the water, out of the ground. There's a lot of different types of heat pumps that we won't go into today, but they're usually about 200 to 300% more efficient than their natural gas equipment that's similar. So while natural gas is currently less expensive, because the equipment is more efficient, you have kind of a cost parity at this moment on the utility side. So except in like super cold days, we're talking probably about lower than 10 degrees, you should have some cost parity in between these systems. And I've heard from the Department of Energy that there's actually some cold environment heat pumps coming out that have much better technology. So this is an area in the market where a lot of new technology is coming up so that we can all electrify our buildings. So some of the benefits to occupants, it does improve safety. We did a study of homes where a very large percentage of the natural gas equipment, either the heaters or the space heaters or furnaces, were actually failing carbon monoxide tests, which is quite scary when you think about it. So when you're looking at market rate homes, maybe only 5% failed because they may have had the more money, things like that to maintain it. We're replacing that equipment more often, but in our low income homes, it was more than 30%. And we want to make sure that we are taking care of this and making sure that this is not such a safety issue and a health indoor air quality issue. And heat pumps also cool. They do air conditioning and heating. So on the air conditioning side, it looks like more than 30% of our homes don't actually have air conditioning. And if you are one of those folks, you know exactly what that means from the last couple of weeks where we've had unusually hot June. And this is a trend that is unfortunately not going away with climate change. So we need to make sure that we are adding air conditioning to folks that do not currently have it. So to talk about the changes to the building code, this is exactly what's going on over the next 3 to 4 years. So the concept is that in all commercial and multifamily buildings, this is not residential home or single family homes. This is multifamily buildings like apartments and condos and that kind of thing, and then commercial buildings. We are going to be requiring partial electrification of space and water heat equipment when the system needs to be replaced, when cost effective. And so when we were talking about cost parity a little bit at this moment, there are some pieces of equipment that just are more expensive because they're newer technology. And so that's why we're designing an incentive program to be able to help reach cost parity. And it also doesn't mean that every single existing building out there needs to tomorrow go tear out all of their natural gas equipment. That is not what we're saying. We're saying that when your system reaches the end of its life, or breaks or dies or needs to be replaced, that you replace it with something that is electrified instead of working off of a fossil fuel. So it comes in different parts, the implementation of the ordinance. So starting in January of 2023, which is not very far away, we are going to have new requirements when you're replacing your natural gas equipment. So they are going to be increasing the minimum requirements for the efficiencies of the equipment and the emissions limits. And then you would have to turn in 2 out of the 3 items on the list. So you have to submit an electrification feasibility report, which is in development right now. And we'll talk about that more in a second. You need to right size the equipment for the current space needs. Very old fashioned mechanical engineering ideas actually looked at oversizing the equipment just to make sure you had the capacity just in case, which ends up wasting a lot of energy. So we want people to right size the equipment. Then, or you have to pressure test the natural gas piping, which if I have heard is pretty difficult and a little expensive. So we think most people are going to do the first 2 bullets. And so you could possibly be still replacing natural gas equipment with natural gas equipment in 2023 and 2024, but you have to at least look at electrification and do the right sizing of your equipment. So then in 2025 and 2027, we get into the nitty gritty of actually requiring people to change out the equipment. So we have two different groups. We have an easy to electrify group, which is going to be the first one that's done, which includes furnaces, rooftop units, individual water heaters, and when that cost effective. These are things where the equipment is available on the market now. And so that's what we consider easy to electrify. The harder to electrify equipment, which the current market does not have a really good solution at this moment, or it's really expensive, are P-tax boilers and central hot waters. So those are going to be done in 2027. So these are some of the program elements around our electrification program. We are going to be designing templates for our feasibility reports, putting out educational materials and trainings on how to fill them out. Our office is the one that actually does the submissions of the feasibility report in conjunction with what all of the rest of the stuff that you turn in to CPD. And then we are going to be designing standards for exemptions of turning in those feasibility reports, like when would you be exempt? And we think we're going to be doing probably about 1,200 feasibility reports a year. So we have a lot to work on. We are also going to be doing pilots. So we still have to design what our methods are to make those pilots actually happen, but that's going to happen in the next couple of months. So I'll give you more details on that on another slide. We're recruiting for those projects right now. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach to the industry to kind of help shift that market to be able to have more technology to be able to work with. Our pilot project implementation is probably going to start 2 to 3 months from now, and we're focusing on doing at least 50% of the pilots are going to be in under-resourced buildings. So if you are one of those buildings that is getting close to the end of the system life for your natural gas equipment, then we have a link in another page where you can do that. And we plan on doing about 70 total pilots. It's actually quite a large number of pilots to make sure that we design our incentives in a way that makes sense. And so for our incentives, we're taking those lessons learned from the pilots, we're researching our incentive design, and then we're going to actually be putting those incentives out there. And so our goal is to reach at least 10% of our easy to electrify buildings to fill in some of those cost parity gaps with our incentives. So our pilot products, we are looking at the easy to electrify systems right now. Those pilots are going to probably start in a couple of months. And that means tank type water heaters, furnaces, and if you have rooftop units. Our harder to electrify system pilots are going to start probably in 2024. And that would be things like package terminal air conditioners or P-tax, central hot water systems, and boilers. And there's a link at the bottom that if you want to inquire, if you're interested in being one of the pilot buildings, you can fill out that form and see if you qualify. So this is the timeline that our electrification incentives are on. So for our easy to electrify equipment, we have the pilot starting in 2022. Then we're going to be releasing incentives where at least 50% of the incentives are going to be spent in under-resourced buildings. And then once we get to a point where we have a certain amount of buildings done, probably early 2025, we're going to switch the incentives over to being 100% under-resourced buildings. For the feasibility reports, we're actually working on those now as a template, figuring out what those requirements and incentives are to get the feasibility reports done. And then we will switch over incentives if you need assistance in turning in those feasibility or creating those feasibility reports. We're going to change over our incentives to be 100% under-resourced buildings to help them get those feasibility reports done. Then in our hard to electrify equipment, we are not really going to start focusing on those until 2024 and then up through 2027. So this is one slide of Jeff's that I don't actually know much about, but I think what he was going to talk about was the opportunity and looking at the numbers of buildings, their square footage, and what type of systems that they have. This is some of the information that we have at this moment and some of the funding levels that we have for the pilots, for some of the incentives. We actually have a whole lot more of the of dollars available for the incentives. So this particular slide might only be on pilots, but if you want more information about what is on this slide, then we can always connect you with Jeff later. So our pilot process, we're looking at recruitment. You need to sign up on the Energized Denver forms page. So if you just go to Energized Denver main website, I think there's the box for electrification or just for forms, and you can go directly to that form and fill it out, which then results in an interview. Then we have to document what the current condition is, do an electrification feasibility study, sign up for custom rebates to make sure that we're filling in some of that money gap with Excel rebates, and then look at financing if that's needed for this particular pilot. Then we have some planning work to do. We actually have to design the equipment, get cost estimates, and then turn in things to CPD for them to approve the installation. Then there's the installation where we do photos, do a site visit, do interviews and inspections to make sure the installation went well. And then there's a follow-up where there's an additional site visit. We actually write up a story about what happened in your pilot so other folks can learn from you as a case study, and then do photos and interviews to complement that. So that is my part of the presentation. If you have any questions about the benchmarking and performance requirements, you can call in to the Energized Denver Hub. You can either go to the website and find this information here's the email or the phone number to call. We are actually onboarding a contractor to help us with the electrification program, so that support is coming soon. And this is the link to the pilot inquiry form. So I'm going to turn it back over to the next person. Let me stop sharing.
Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Please let me, or my presentation,
Yes.
Please let me know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen May. I'm the product manager at Xcel Energy, overseeing our income qualified programs. Today, I'm going to be reviewing our income qualified beneficial electrification pilot that Xcel launched at the beginning of 2022. Sorry about that. So prior to going into our pilot program, I wanted to touch on Xcel Energy's clean energy strategy, which is going to kind of help explain some of the why behind our new program. We have committed to a net zero energy future. So this means by 2030, we're aiming to reduce carbon emissions by 80% company-wide from the electricity that you use. And this is on our way to delivering 100% carbon-free electricity by 2050. We're also focusing on lowering greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2030. And that's on our way to being net zero natural gas by 2050. And then finally, we are focused on powering 1.5 million electric vehicles in the areas that we serve. And the carbon emissions from these vehicles are expected to cut nearly 5 million tons each year. So based on our clean energy goals, we have a larger focus on beneficial electrification. This often leads to a larger question, what exactly is beneficial electrification? We define this as using electricity to do things that used to be done with fossil fuels. So for today's example, that would be heating homes and businesses with heat pumps instead of natural gas furnaces and boilers. And this is all done in an effort to reduce the overall carbon emissions. So we developed a new pilot program which encourages the adoption of heat pumps, which are used for heating and cooling buildings, but this also covers water heating. Xcel has offered heat pump rebates on heat pump equipment for several years now. I think this was touched on earlier in the presentation, but heat pump technology can be very expensive. So the goal of this pilot program is to fully fund the installation of heat pump equipment. I do want to make one important call out that Even though this pilot is focused on beneficial electrification, buildings with existing electric resistance heating are also eligible for the pilot. So this pilot is also going to go one step further by analyzing bill impacts associated with the installation of the heat pump. Natural gas is cheaper than electricity, so balancing and understanding the bill impacts to installing heat pumps is an important piece for best practices with beneficial electrification. The pilot program is associated with Energy Outreach Colorado's nonprofit energy efficiency program, otherwise known as NEAT. I know that EOC presented on this program yesterday, but for any nonprofits who are interested in this pilot program, there is an application process to be part of the NEAT program. And then once participating, EOC and their partners will assess the heating and cooling needs for the building and determine if it's a good fit for heat pump installation. Touching on eligibility for the pilot, you must receive electric service from Xcel Energy, but the nonprofit also must qualify for EOC's NEAT program. I have listed some of the qualifications on this slide, but I also provided contact information at the end of this presentation in case you want to find out more information about NEAT. For nonprofits who have participated in NEAT before, you are automatically qualified if you decide to pursue additional updates at your facility. In other words, you don't need to reapply if you've participated before. Another area we often receive questions is, what is a heat pump and how do they work? So a heat pump is far more energy efficient than traditional heating and cooling equipment, since heat pumps move energy rather than creating it. Heat pumps can also look like typical cooling systems, but their design is different in that the heat and cool a building as needed. And then another advantage of a heat pump is they can be designed to use a secondary heating source. So for example, if your building has a functioning natural gas furnace or boiler today, a heat pump could be installed while keeping that existing furnace and boiler in place. And then especially on super cold days, that secondary heating source can be used to help offset bill impacts. So going into the benefits of a heat pump, heat pumps are gaining a lot of attention over the last few years in Colorado. So if reducing your carbon footprint is a priority for you, a heat pump can help you achieve this goal. And then through the NEAT program, an additional benefit is the building assessment that they do. EOC will determine additional needs for the building, which can include improvements like insulation and air sealing. And then having these additional improvements completed will increase comfort within your building, but will also help the heat pump work more efficiently. If you are interested in learning more, I provided contact information for Ann Cruz at EOC, as well as a link to their website. Xcel Energy is a funding partner for EOC, so the first step in this process is going to be applying for the NEAT program, and the application can be found on the website provided here. And with that, I will turn it back over to Katie, I believe.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into the Q&A time. We've got all of us here. The first question is for Sharon. How often does Energized Denver benchmarking data need to be updated for large buildings?
Every year. So you take your calendar year data, it's kind of like a January to a January, and you have to turn it in by June 1st every year.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I have another question for you. Can you talk a little more about benchmarking and its value to an organization's bottom line, so the executive can get better support from the leadership at their organization?
Yeah, benchmarking is one of the kind of most important things that you can do to get started. You kind of like, you can't change what you don't measure because you don't understand exactly what's going on in your building. So then how can you actually make those changes? And so I put a link in the website to energystar.gov, which is honestly one of the best websites where they have just a huge amount of resources on how to think about your energy. And they're the ones that actually run the portfolio manager program that we collect the benchmarking data through. So our ordinance actually says you have to be 25,000 square feet and up, but that doesn't mean that you can't just use this tool. It's free for everybody. So if you're a 10,000 square foot building, you can also benchmark your building inside of Portfolio Manager and kind of understand what's going on. So some of the studies that Energy Star has done, because the system's been around for, I would say, at least 20 years, is that once buildings learn about their energy data, they can save 5 to 15% just off of the top, just based on different behavior, or not even changing out equipment or doing some of the low cost, no cost type of energy efficiency things. So just the fact that you're benchmarking your data, you're putting those monthly utility bills into the system, so it kind of tells you where you are, what type of building, and compares you to other buildings in the country that are exactly like yours, and tells you how you're performing and gives you, that's what that Energy score is. So if you have a 75 or higher, you're actually in the top 25% of the buildings in the country, and it shows that you're actually doing a pretty decent job. So you might have to look a little bit more closely on what you're doing in your building to be able to save some additional money. But if you're in, let's say, the 30s, that means you're kind of in the bottom 30%. And there's a lot of opportunity for you to be able to change out your lighting, look at your HVAC equipment, do some of these things that is actually going to save you a lot of money on your utility bills. And especially if you're nonprofit or an under-resourced building, there is a lot of help out there through Excel, through Energy Outreach Colorado, and a lot of different programs. So probably most of the folks that are listening in right now would be eligible for a lot of these different programs that are going to help you with the cost.
Okay, thank you. I've got another question. I'm not certain who it's addressed to. I think Sharon, though.
I could possibly help.
Yeah. As buildings and transportation electrify, will energy generation be able to keep us up with increased demand? How often will renewable energy generation scale to ensure that emissions created on the demand side are not simply moved over to the generation side, fossil fuel electricity generation?
Yeah, and if Kristen, you want to add anything, go for it. There's some studies that I think a person on our team has worked with Excel to look at what is the capacity of the system. And because we do have a certain capacity now, if you look at the system overall, the capacity is there. They really don't have any concerns about the overall capacity of our systems in Denver. The concern might be some of the individual microgrids. Let's say that you're in the downtown center right off of 16th Street. You know, that particular grid might be a little bit more full or more, you know, dependent on it, less than another one. And so there might be a couple of issues here and there that Excel is trying to plan for and make sure that individual microgrids have the capacity to be able to handle this. But the overall system as a whole is actually okay. I know they've got some plans and are working on different things. If you wanted to look at that clean energy plan that probably has, that Excel put out last year, that probably has a lot more information in it that'll be able to answer that question.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have, unless someone wants to type one in there super quick. Oh, here we go. I got another one. This is for you, Sharon. Are there resources for under-resourced buildings to help them with entering the benchmarking information?
Yeah, yes. So if at this moment you can get general coaching for our Energized Denver hub, what we're designing over the next couple of months is a little bit more hand-holding than than what we offer right now through the hub. So what I would say is just go ahead and call the hub, see what they can help you with now. And then over the next couple of months, we will probably be offering some additional, but then we'll also have this process of making sure that the building qualifies for the additional resources as an under-resourced building. So that there is a process to be able, you can actually go onto the website now and fill out a form to see if you qualify for these resources and support that we're going to be offering in a couple of months. But what I'll say for the benchmarking is actually one of the more easier part of the program. Improving your energy efficiency is a little bit more complicated because you get into equipment. The benchmarking data, one of the more difficult things is just pulling the data together, getting all of your utility bills, especially if you're in multifamily, you're going to have to work. You may have the common area bills, but then you've got to work with Excel for them to be able to aggregate the tenant data. And so that's actually one of the more difficult parts. There are things on energystar.gov. There's some videos you can watch that show you how to use the system, and data collection worksheets where you can actually print out the worksheets, walk around your building and collect the information that you need to be able to put it in. And some of that's just a one-time setup. Once you've set it up in the system, then all you're doing is adding your utility bills once a year. So the benchmarking isn't quite that bad. It's more about the energy efficiency and understanding your equipment and your building and what you need to do. That's a little bit more intimidating. So.
Thank you. Okay, Kristen, you're up. Wondering, you're aware of any training or coaching for small nonprofits that want to do more electrification?
Sure. So I think this would be a wonderful opportunity for any of those small nonprofits to reach out to Energy Outreach Colorado. That program has a lot of benefits, especially with education that they can help these nonprofits with. So I would say that's probably one of the better areas to start. I know Excel is going to be doing a lot of trainings when it comes to electrification coming up. So I think that's another area where we can share the information as these webinars are coming up, just share that out with the broader businesses across Denver and throughout our territory.
Yeah, and I know part of Jeff's program as they implement it is going to include working with Excel Energy, Energy Outreach Colorado, and a couple other organizations to build out more about electrification and that training and education that folks need.
In addition, even to webinars, there are a lot of just collateral pieces and marketing campaigns that are being put together. And this is all based on education to learn more about electrification and opportunities for businesses.
Okay. Trying to give it a second to see if any more questions come in, but it seems like that's all the questions. So we'll conclude a little bit early, just a longer break for everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. The next session's coming up after the break. We're going to be session B1, charging ahead, role of electric vehicles and bikes in electrification, as well as B2, outdoor spaces and environmental planning, air, water. The nonprofit lab will be putting out links for in the chat for the session if you don't remember which sessions you signed up for. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Save Green, Be Green conference. Just wanted to name the session we are in to make sure everyone is in the correct one. This is session A2, the Circular Economy Recycling Management, and it will be running from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. During this session, you'll be hearing from Suzanne Satter with the EPA, who will be presenting on the circular economy and recycling and composting. Followed by Suzanne will be Scott Hutchings with Waste Management, who will be presenting on contamination and what happens at the end of the line. And just a reminder, we're still following the structure for questions. So we'll go through all the questions at the end during a Q&A time. For the Q&A, we'll go through the sessions in the chat in the order we receive them during the presentation. And then once we go through all those questions, we'll open it back up for a discussion to all. So with that, I want to hand it over to Suzanne Satter.
All right, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, is it full screen?
Yep, it appears to be full screen.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, good morning. Today I'm going to talk about the circular economy and why it's important. Okay. Oops, sorry. And I've selected 4 materials to talk about as they present problems and also some of the solutions that circular economy can solve with these issues. At the end, there's also a slide with all of the references on it. So anything that I'm showing in here that has a reference or a link will be in that reference slide. This disclaimer is here because although I'll be talking about certain brands and manufacturers, it doesn't mean that EPA is actually supporting or endorsing any of those. So what is a circular economy? The circular economy, whoops, sorry. Having trouble with my slides here. I don't know why this is doing this. Sorry. All right, hopefully that'll work. Okay, a circular economy makes use of a more restorative model of production and consumption. It recognizes that we have only finite resources and we should make decisions based on this. In principles, it can be broken down into 3 action plans. One is to design out waste, which is really the most important aspect of the circular economy. More than 80% of all environmental impacts are determined during the design stage. The next important part is to keep products and materials in use. And the other thing is to regenerate natural systems. So how is that different? More than 100 billion tons of resources enter the economy every year. Everything from metals, minerals, fossil fuels, to organic materials. The use of resources has tripled since 1970, and it's set to double again by 2050. So we really need to be thinking about something other than they make, use, waste, linear way of looking at materials. If we don't change our use of materials, we're going to need another planet to supply the materials that we're going to need. So we really need to think about a new way of looking at how we use materials other than the take, make, waste way of looking at things. The first material that I'm going to take a look at here are textiles, particularly fast fashion in the US. The US averages 25 billion pounds of textiles annually. That's 82 pounds per US resident. 15% is donated or recycled, and the remaining 85% is landfilled. That means 21 billion pounds of textiles are wasted in landfills per year. This picture on the right is a picture of tons of clothing that have been dumped in Chile's Atacama Desert. Unfortunately, a large portion of recycled materials winds up going to South America and to Africa, where they frequently are not able to use them. The fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon dioxide emissions. That's more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. This slide shows the number of times a garment is actually worn, which, as you can see, has gone down over the years since 2002. But unfortunately, as you can see, this bottom line is the US line, and the number of times that the average American wears a garment is less than 50 times during the lifetime of a garment. So what happens when we throw away clothing? First of all, it takes up a lot of space, but it can also, it also wastes all the money that went into the making of that item. It can also take 200 plus years for an item to decompose in the landfill. And during that time, the textiles can generate greenhouse methane gas and leach toxic chemicals and dyes into the groundwater and soil. As I said earlier, the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon dioxide emissions each year. So what kinds of procedures could fast fashion take on? One would be to create new business models that increase clothing reuse, use inputs that are safe and renewable, not toxic, develop solutions so used clothes are turned into new, and consider a subscription model. Here's an example from a Dutch company called Mud, excuse me. They have a leasing program. You subscribe to lease a pair of jeans. So during that leasing period, you can have free repairs of your jeans. After you lease for a year, you can swap out your jeans for a new pair. You can keep the jeans, or you can end your relationship and send everything back. What Mud discovered was that the parts that were really hard to recycle were the zipper and the rivets. So what they did is that their jeans have buttons instead of a zipper, and all of the buttons can be removed and replaced for your new pair of jeans. So if you want to turn in your pair of jeans for a new pair, you keep your buttons and you just put them on your new pair of jeans. So here's some, So here are some ways to fight fast fashion at home. Shop for sustainable and ethical brands. Buy less often. Donate or sell gently used clothing. Donate or sell gently used clothing. Buy or rent secondhand clothes, like Rent the Runway, and recycle textiles and garments. This is one of my favorite photos about plastics. So this particular photo came from an August 1955 Life magazine. They published an article with the now vaguely sinister, then celebratory title, Throwaway Living. The idea was that humans had entered a kind of wanton golden age when cleaning up after ourselves was just one more quaint waste of time. Tossing more and more of our used once items into the trash was another sign of modern life's improvement. The caption says, the objects flying through the air in this picture would take 40 hours to clean, except that no housewife need bother. They're all meant to be thrown away after use. Lucky, lucky housewife. So what does 8.3 3 billion metric tons of plastic look like? That's how many tons of plastic have been produced worldwide. How heavy is 8.3 billion metric tons? It's 822,000 times heavier than the Eiffel Tower, 25,000 times heavier than the Empire State Building, 80 million times the weight of a blue whale, and 1 billion times the weight of an elephant. So what happens to that plastic? 6.3 metric tons of plastic have been discarded as waste. And only about 9% of plastic produced is recycled on average globally. That means that close to 80% is being sent into landfills or into the environment in some way as litter, trash. Plastics make up 12% of material in landfills. If the current trends hold, 12 billion tons of waste will exist by 2050. So this graphic shows where the plastic is going. So you can see the majority of the plastic is going into packaging. And typically that's used once and then tossed. So an industry solution for plastic is this Every Bottle Back initiative. It's being supported by the American Beverage Association. Of that, the members are Coca-Cola, Keurig, Pepsi. They've launched this initiative with the idea that 100% of their plastic bottles and caps will be recyclable and they won't wind up as waste in oceans, rivers, or landfills. Here are some things that you can do to get rid of plastic. Give up your coffee cup lids. Give up things in plastic when there's a paper option, like think eggs in a paper carton instead of clamshell packaging. Don't take a straw. Get rid of plastic packaged produce, plastic produce bags, plastic shopping bags, plastic wrap, Ziploc bags, party plastic, that the ubiquitous red Solo cup, and get rid of water bottles. Here are a couple of initiatives, federal initiatives regarding plastic. The first one is called the Save Our Seas Act of 2020. It's given authority to the EPA to design grants and reports on post-consumer materials management. This is something that's going on right now, and grants will be made available to communities to improve or initiate waste management in their communities. The EPA also has a trash-free waters program that primarily focuses on aquatic trash prevention and removal. Here are a couple of Colorado initiatives. This first one, which was just passed, is Colorado House Bill 22-1355. It's an extended producer responsibility bill. You may have heard of EPRs. It mandates companies that sell consumer-facing packaging and some printed material to join an organization, pay dues, and through those dues, manage a statewide recycling system. Colorado is the third state in the U.S. to initiate an EPR bill, and the first one in the 2022 legislative session. Another bill, House Bill 21-1162, bans single-use plastic bags and polystyrene packaging. And that will go into effect January 1st, 2024. So before the ban takes place, businesses impacted will need to implement a 10-cent bag fee on January 2023. Those of us who live in Denver have already been doing that. There has been a a city ordinance that has banned or is charging people for plastic bags or any bag at all. Electronics, that's the next material I'll be talking about. Or e-waste. It represents 2% of America's trash in landfills, but it equals 70% of overall toxic waste. The toxic waste from e-trash has lead, cadmium, mercury, polyvinyl chloride, and flame resistance chemicals. 20 to 50 million metric tons of e-waste is disposed worldwide every year. It's the fastest growing municipal waste stream in the US, and that's according to the EPA, and it takes 530 pounds of fossil fuel, 48 pounds of chemicals, and 1.5 tons of water to manufacture one computer and monitor. Now that's during the entire process of removing the metals from the earth throughout the entire production and transportation of a computer and monitor. So this is what we're consuming. 1.5 billion cell phones were manufactured in 2018. The average time an American keeps a cell phone is only 34 months. 80% of the materials that go into electronics is wasted. And that's true both in the US and in the rest of the world. And 30% is just lost. It can't be. It can't be recycled or reclaimed. So what are some solutions to that? There's a movement called Right to Repair, and particularly Right to Repair electronics, with the idea that if you own something, you should be able to repair it yourself or take it to a technician of your choice and update the material, the screen, software. Legally, American shoppers are mostly already allowed to repair their electronics. But there are those scary warning stickers on electronics that you've seen. Basically, those are bogus. Under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, you're allowed to repair anything you own. But practically speaking, people are often denied the information or the parts to repair their equipment. These are some tenets, these are some tenets of the Right to Repair movement. Make information available, make parts and tools available so people can repair their electronics, allow unblocking, which means you can install your own custom software, and accommodate repair in the actual design of the product. Here's a nifty site. It's called iFixit. It's an online site where you can download hundreds of repair guides and repair tools to fix almost anything from an iPhone to a hot tub. I love this graphic that they use. Would you buy a car if it was illegal to replace the tires? Would you buy a bike if you couldn't fix the chain? Probably not. I'm using the example of headphones. There are 549 million headphones were shipped worldwide in 2020. And unfortunately, when your headphones break or a new design comes out, they get tossed. And 85% of the material could be recycled. Here's a company, another Amsterdam or Dutch company that produces a modular headphone. So you actually rent, you pay a subscription monthly or yearly to rent these headphones. When something's not working or you need an upgrade, you can send it back to the company and have that part upgraded. Or you can return the whole headphone and it'll be partsed out into other headphones. Food. Food is the largest percentage of material in a landfill, about 24%. When food goes into the landfill, it's similar to tying food in a plastic bag and having it rot. So all the inputs that went into it are wasted. The transportation, the preparation, and food in landfills is particularly bad because as it's decaying, gives us methane gas. 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is lost or wasted every year. And where is that happening? 43% is happening in consumers' homes. 40% happens in restaurants, grocery stores. 16% is lost on farms, and 2% is lost in the manufacturing process. For farms, it's mostly due to weather or lack of labor. It's not really wasted, it's lost. So a circular economy for food mimics the natural systems of regeneration so that waste isn't created, but it's a feedstock for another cycle. Danone, actually a French company, but they make in the US Oikos, Too Good, Horizon Organic, and other products, has initiated a program where they support their producers in soil health. So they do they do less tilling, they use cover crops so that they have healthy soil. And by doing that, they're able to reduce the amount of erosion that happens in soil and renew the nutrients in soil. Here's another way. This is a way of keeping materials in use. This British beer company takes discarded breadcrumbs from a big sandwich manufacturer and uses those breadcrumbs to replace about 1/4 of the malts that would be typically used to brew. So it turns out to be about a piece of toast per a pint of beer, which seems like a pretty good deal to me. Here's a good here's a good thing to know about. This is sorry. I'll keep you guessing here. Foodkeeper is an app that's available for Apple or Android. It's easy to download and it will show you how long you could keep something, how long something is good after the best buy date, so that you're not discarding food. 30 to 40% of the entire food supply is lost or wasted in the US. So instead of wasting food, donate it to a food pantry, donate it to people who need it. The Good Samaritan Food Donation Act of 1996 provides a limited liability for anybody who donates food. People are sometimes concerned about donating food because they're afraid they could get sued if it goes bad. But if you keep food in its original packaging, unopened, at the appropriate temperature, and you donate it, you basically have no liability when you donate it. And what can you do as individuals? Compost to keep food out of landfills, and you'll reduce greenhouse gases. Freeze food that you can't eat. immediately, and plan meals and make deliberate grocery store shopping lists. Here are my references. These will all be available to you because this is being recorded, and the slides will be available to you. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
That was a really interesting presentation, Suzanne. Lots of cool information. I didn't realize the breadth of information to dive into. So thank you. Just wanted to give an update to everyone. So we had something come up with our second presenter, Scott Hutchings, and then we'll have to, you all will still have access to the materials that he was going to share, his presentation. So once they're posted on the host's website. But for now, we're going to enter a Q&A session for Suzanne. So I'll be diving into the chat here. And then after the Q&A, we will start the second session as planned at 10:15. So there will be a longer break than 15 minutes, just giving everyone a heads up. But we are going to go ahead and do the Q&A with Suzanne starting now. So if anyone has additional questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'm going to be answering them in the order they were received during the presentation. So we have one question here. How can nonprofit organizations mobilize its recycling efforts?
That's a good question. Are you talking about the circular economy? Is that what you're talking about?
Perhaps, yeah, I think this question came in during that session. It was right after the,
I'm sorry.
it was right after the clothing recycling. So kind of diving into the electronics, the clothing, the just materials in general. How can nonprofits implement it in their organizations?
Probably the best thing you can do is by education, is to let people know. I mean, just these slides will be available to you to let people know where things go. For instance, with, I mean, this is sad in terms of recycling clothing, and there's some clothing companies that will take clothing back. H&M does it, I think Madewell does it, but the reality is that only about 0.7% of, let's say, when we're talking about textiles and the clothing, only about 0.7% actually gets remade into clothing. Most of it goes to making mops or rags or insulation material. So the key is to, I think I said in the slides, be more careful in terms of buying. Let your clients or your congregants know where things are going, and encourage them to repair, reuse, consider the subscription options. But I think it's mostly just education is the best thing you can do as a nonprofit. And then if you have, let's say, food waste from a particular event, there are a number of organizations that will take your food and deliver them to pantries that need that food. So did that answer some questions?
Yes, I think so. There was a clarifying question to that same question. So in terms of education programs that can be adopted, does the EPA provide these materials, particularly for children and youth?
We have some materials, and I would have to look into that. I think there is some of that. I'm not sure that there is much of anything on the circular economy now, because for us, it's kind of a new way of looking at things. The EPA has been very much concentrated on recycling, which is important. It's still important. Composting, reusing. So this is kind of a new way of looking at things. And my contact information is on that slide. And it's a very, very good idea that we develop materials that would be good for kids. But I'll look into it and see if we have any. Like I said, we've been so focused, I think, over the years on that more of that linear economy where resources are extracted and you make something and then it's thrown away, that we're needing to look at a different way of how we use materials. So yeah, we need something for kids. I'll look into that. Thanks.
The other question we have here is staff training available to adopt recycling? Sorry, the question is staff training available packaged to adopt recycling? I'm not sure, maybe that's like a packaged training to share with folks that want to learn about recycling.
Sure, I'd be, pardon me. I'd be happy to do a presentation. And we have other members of the EPA staff. I work in a program called Sustainable Materials Management. So we'd be happy to do a presentation for anybody who's interested in learning more about the circular economy and ways we can be better stewards of the environment. So I'd be happy to do that. We do that. We do outreach. So that's definitely something we could do. Again, you can contact me and I'd be happy to do a presentation or find somebody who could do a presentation for you.
Thank you. We have a few more questions here in the chat. So the next one is, what is being done to market these organizations like the Gerrard Street Headphones or Toastdale?
Well, as EPA, we can't do that. We can never promote one particular product or any particular manufacturer. So we don't do that. I mean, that's not a great answer, but I just started looking around to find companies who are doing that, and there are more and more who are doing that. So I'll probably be doing more research on that. I think there's some textile organizations or manufacturing organizations that I could also look into and see if there are programs that are in existence that are looking to increase recycling. As I said, I know there's some manufacturers or some stores, especially like fast fashion stores like H&M. H&M has a take back program. I'm just looking through my notes here. Madewell has a program where you can take materials back. Patagonia has a program where you can take programs back. And I think, you'd have to, unfortunately, we have to check the reality of how much, if any, of the recycled goods actually get made into new goods. And I think that happens to varying degrees.
Great. Thank you. The other question we have here is, where can you donate leftover food? What restaurants or what can restaurants donate and why don't they?
A lot of them do, and I didn't put a slide up on that. But again, if you contact me, there are a couple of great resources in the city. And there's also, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've got a cold. I'm going to move off camera here and blow my nose. Sorry. There are a couple of great local organizations. Some of them will actually pick up your food and take it to a pantry. And some pantries, sorry, will actually pick up food. But send me an email and I'll give you the names of some of those organizations. But they exist and they have really pretty robust programs.
The other question we have here is, when recycling food containers, they need to be washed. How do you weigh out using the extra water versus throwing the container away?
That is a good question. And I was hoping our second presenter could talk about that a little bit more. But ideally, sorry, I would encourage you to take your own container. If you're talking about, some places may be a little skittish about that, but I have started to do that myself in restaurants. And if I take food home, I just bring my own container. It's a glass container with a lid. And there is a trade-off in terms of how much energy, water you use to clean up plastic that you in turn recycle. And I don't have a number on that. It is a really good question, and that may be yeah, that's something that I could look into. I don't know. I've never seen anything published on that. Like if you spend 30 seconds washing out number 2 container, and it's recycled, what's the offset of that? And I don't know. I just know that the best thing to do, and more restaurants are, it's still it's an industry in its infancy, but there are some restaurants, and actually EPA has given some grant money to programs where you have a container, and you wherever it is that you're getting your food, we'll put your food in the container. When you're done with it, you return it, they clean it, and then they recycle it. These are metal containers. Typically, I think they're called tiffin boxes. But so there are restaurants, takeout. Fast food is hard, just like fast fashion. But more and more companies are looking at not using the coatings that are used on like the clam shells and on the paper that they use to wrap fast food in. So it's changing slightly so that the cardboard or the paper or whatever it is that your item comes in can actually be more than likely probably composted and not recycled, because recycling of cardboard that's contaminated is not a good thing. So let's say a pizza box. So you've got a pizza box and you have leftover pizza in it, or there's some contamination. Best thing to do is rip out that section, throw that away. If you have composting, you could put it in compost, but then the rest of the uncontaminated cardboard can go into recycling. Actually, there's a really good market for recycled cardboard and paper. Recycling market for cardboard, paper is good, as well as for aluminum cans. And some manufacturers are starting to use aluminum cans because an aluminum can is almost 100% recyclable. So there is movement among manufacturers. And one of the things that legislation, I talked about, the extended producer responsibility, is trying to deal with across the country, and particularly in Denver with our new legislation, is to put the responsibility on waste diversion or waste on the manufacturer. And forever, the onus of the responsibility of disposing waste has been on consumers and not on manufacturers. So particularly with the circular economy, we're looking at the manufacturers. We're looking at how things are made and designed in the first place so that it doesn't become waste. So there is movement in that area because not going to be able to recycle our way out of the dilemma of waste prevention. So there is movement because more and more people are really concerned about that.
Yeah, what a great answer. More of the preventative kind of plan.
That's something we really need to think about. Preventative. So you look for something that's designed to not create waste, and then hopefully you keep whatever it is that you have in use longer. Like, your plastic container can be reused, your clothing can be upcycled or repaired or just used longer.
Yeah. Transitioning into the e-waste topic, we do have a question in the chat concerning that. So it's concerning e-waste, it's interesting that another sustainable strategy is to quote unquote electrify energy consumption, such as cars, appliances. Are manufacturers being held accountable for the process?
So are you thinking in terms of the waste or the let's say for an electric vehicle in terms of the battery? Is that?
There wasn't any more detail surrounding that. So I think they were using it just generally. E-waste, I mean, it could be your batteries. I think you're right. Their cars, appliances, just the different metals that can be recycled or thrown. Are manufacturers being held accountable for what that process looks like?
There is actually a lot of interest now. Actually, EPA is providing some grant funding for battery recycling. I mean, the first round, I think, is going to be on labeling batteries appropriately and also looking for ways to promote recycling or extracting the usable materials from batteries. I mean, that's what comes to mind to me first in terms of electronics. But pardon me, but I don't basically excuse me, the onus of recycling or disposal is still on the consumer. Like I said, what I do know in terms of electronics is that there is a lot of research being done on batteries, particularly car batteries, because they have a limited lifespan. And so within the next few years, we could see multiple metric tons of wasted batteries going into landfills. So there's a lot of research that's going on, and how can we reuse the materials that are in these batteries, because typically much of the materials comes from underdeveloped countries, and also countries that are in some state of political upheaval. So yeah, there is a lot of research going into battery development, and of course batteries probably are the source of energy for many electronics.
Thank you. We have another question. These questions keep coming in. This other one is, this is a plastics waste question. Coleman air mattresses for camping usually last a season, and thousands go into landfills each year. No one seems to want to take in this material. Any ideas on who might take this heavy PVC material?
I don't. I don't have any. I have seen these kinds of materials used, not that you're talking about the Coleman mattress. I've not seen those recycled, but I have seen, pardon me, some heavy like plastic signs, that have been recycled into tote bags. So I have seen that being done. That could be a whole new industry, but I don't know of anybody who is recycling that material particularly. It's part of the problem with plastics. I mean, plastics have been a wonderful invention for us and made our lives easier in many ways, but plastics are kind of forever. So yeah, I don't have a great answer for you there. Maybe you can come up with a new product that you can make from that heavy duty plastic. That would be great.
I know there was a company in Boulder. It wasn't plastics, it was rubber. They used like the rubber left over from tractors and farm equipment to make purses.
Yeah.
Just heard about them. I think they went out of business a few years ago, but I don't know if PVC could be the next fashionable piece, you know, similar to
Yeah.
rubber.
Yeah. I've seen purses made out of seatbelt material. So yeah, somebody out there should have some kind of clever idea of how it can be repurposed. I think unfortunately with plastics, because they are so different, the chemical composition of plastics is so different that it makes it difficult to recycle them. So there's just no magic fix of you just sort of put something in the machine and you turn the crank and it comes out and you can reuse it again. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist at this time. And unfortunately, when plastics are recycled, each time it's recycled, it's degraded in some way. So you reach a point where plastic just can't be recycled anymore. So, and it's tougher, pardon me, with some of the heavier plastics, the plastics that have particular, let's say, water resistant qualities, and makes them harder to recycle. But maybe there's a company out there, maybe it's you, who can come up with some kind of bedding material that could be recycled or would last longer than a season. I mean, that's kind of one of the sad things about our consumer habits is that, excuse me, plastics are great and they're pretty cheap and they make things that we can use that are really handy, but have a short lifespan. So we just need to, like I said, in the circular economy, we need to be able to design out waste in some way or come up with a material that can be reused in some way or last longer. That's the other thing, you know, other than having to get a new mattress every season. It'd be nice if there's a mattress that lasted 4 seasons instead. So.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A. I had one more question.
Okay.
Anyone feel free to put some more, otherwise we'll end a little early. My question was, when you were talking about the fashion industry in the beginning, I had just learned a couple years ago about this concept called the shared economy or the collaborative economy, which is becoming very popular in the EU. And it can include, you know, services like Uber, Airbnb, where you're basically borrowing other people's spaces, their cars, you know, it's this kind of shared collaborative model. But I had also heard it's being applied to items as well. So you mentioned leasing clothing, you know, having these fashion shops where you can rent clothing and, you know, return it back like a library, you know, having a library card going in, borrowing that dress for that occasion, returning it back. I was going to ask, I'm curious if there's been any recent developments surrounding the shared economy, particularly with items in the United States.
That's it is part of the circular economy, and I don't have any not broader knowledge, pardon me, outside of what I talked about today. But you're right. We are looking more and more at shared spaces, and you're right. Shared cars, shared living. Sharing houses, and I think we're moving in that direction, especially with clothing. There are it's like Rent the Runway, and there's several others where you can rent equipment. I know, for instance, there's a lending library of tools. There's one in Denver, and I can't remember the name of it, but you could email me and I could find it. So you're right. There's more and more interest in a shared economy. And I think it's my personal opinion is it's been being driven by people like you, a younger generation. You want to have a really small environmental footprint, and part of the way of doing that is sharing items. Like, it's great.
Yeah, it brings everyone together as well,
It does.
Well, I don't think we have any more questions. Is there any additional comments you had, Suzanne, before we go on break?
I don't, but feel free to contact me if you'd like more information, or you have ideas for me that we should be looking at as EPA. We're in a big push right now to do grant funding on making recycling better in our communities across the country. So any ideas you have, or if you'd like more information, I'd be happy to share them with you.
Thank you very much. So it looks like the Nonprofit Learning Lab put in the link for the next session. If you all are interested in attending, the role of electric vehicles.
Excuse me.
No worries. So if you don't remember which session you signed up for, you can follow that link or stay on this one to attend the outdoor spaces and environmental planning. Thank you, everyone. We will resume at 10:15. We'll be going on break now.
Welcome back, everyone, from your break. This is session B1, Charging Ahead. the role of electric vehicles and bikes in electrification. It'll run from approximately 10:15 a.m. to 11:15 a.m. It is concurrent with session B2. Today we've got two presenters. Starting off, we'll have Sam Domeyer with the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. He will be presenting electrified transportation. Following Sam, we'll have Monica Rosenbluth with Excel Energy. She will be presenting electrified transportation. We will go through the questions at the end of the presentations during our question and answer time, during which we will go through the questions sent in the chat and the order we received them during the presentations. We ask that along with your question, you also clarify which presenter the question is for. Once we go through those questions, we will open up the discussion to all. Sam, if you'd like to take it away.
Great. Thanks so much for that introduction, Katie. Appreciate it. And thanks for having me here. Really happy to be a part of this today and join the great list of folks that are presenting on different topics. And so thank you for that. I'm sharing my screen right now, and we'll go ahead and get my slideshow started for you. And are you able to see slide 1?
It looks good, Sam.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, again, thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here today. My name is Sam Domeyer, and I am the City and County of Denver's Electrified Mobility Administrator, working on all things electrified mobility and sustainable transportation. So again, happy to be here today. Thanks for inviting me. I think I'd like to start my presentation by just giving a little bit of background on the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. You might have heard this over the course of the last day and a half, but at least wanted to provide it for folks that haven't. So CASR, the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency is where I work, and we're just one department within the larger city organization. So some background. Mayor Michael Hancock and the Denver City Council created the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency in 2020 to manage the city's ambitious emission reduction goals and sustainability programs in collaboration with fellow departments, other units of government, and community partners. CASR's mission is to, I'm going to read off 4 things. First, act with urgency to proactively mitigate climate change by advancing science-based strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Second, cultivate resiliency in the face of potential climate change-related emergencies. Third, secure an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable city for generations to come. And fourth, ensure that the setting of goals and metrics and monitoring of the results considers equity. So a little bit more about how we fund a lot of our programs. I know this is a question I get more than anyone else, and so I want to provide a little background on that. On November 3rd, 2020, the people of the City and County of Denver voted in favor of ballot initiative 2A, which raised the local sales and use tax by 0.25% to create the Climate Protection Fund, or CPF, as you'll hear me refer to it as. The CPF, which is expected to raise up to $40 million per year, is dedicated to eliminating greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution, supporting climate adaptation, and creating new jobs to improve the lives of Denverites, with efforts focused on communities most harmed by climate change, including low-income households and communities of color. The bill also states that the CPF should, over the long term, endeavor to invest 50% of the dedicated funds directly into the community with a strong lens towards equity, race, and social justice. Climate Protection Fund lists 6 categories of allowable uses, and they are as follows. First, job creation through local workforce training and new careers for under-resourced individuals in clean energy technology. Second, increase investments in solar power, battery storage, and other renewable energy technology. Third, neighborhood-based environmental and climate justice programs. Fourth, adaptation and resiliency programs that help vulnerable communities prepare for a changing climate. Fifth, upgrading the energy efficiency of homes, offices, and industry to reduce their carbon footprint, utility bills, and air pollution. And sixth, what we'll be focusing on today, programs and services that provide affordable, clean, safe, and reliable transportation choices. Things like walking, biking, transit, electric vehicles, and neighborhood scale transit. So you can see here on the screen the language for the Climate Protection Fund that is focused on transportation. Worth noting, transportation sector is the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions and the largest source of air pollution in Denver. And our office, CASR, believes that transportation modes like electric vehicles, or EVs, and electric bikes, or e-bikes, are key to improving air quality and reducing emissions in the Mile High City. So let's talk a little bit about those different modes of transportation, and starting with e-bikes and the benefits. You can see those listed here on the screen. For those that aren't familiar, the electric bicycle, or e-bike, as you hear me say, is a low-emission mode of transportation that, due to pedal assistance, are more accessible for a wider range of demographics and use cases than conventional acoustic bicycles, mainly because range, cargo capacity, accessible terrain, things like that are all increased with an e-bike. They offer an attractive alternative to vehicle travel for many road users, and thus may play a crucial role in achieving mode share, emissions, and vehicle miles traveled reduction goals. As many of you know, e-bikes have become increasingly popular in the last few years. Between 2018 and 2021, units sold in the US annually increased from less than 300,000 to over 1 million. Despite the establishment of a stable and growing market, e-bike ownership remains prohibitively expensive for many people. According to Portland State University, for example, the purchase price of a commuter e-bike ranges from $1,000 to $5,500. This is in contrast to the average purchase prices of around $28,000 for a private vehicle. Because of this stark difference in cost, encouraging the transition to e-bikes is a potential tool for pursuing transportation equity. However, the upfront cost of an e-bike purchase is a hard pill to swallow for many potential adopters of the technology, particularly individuals earning a low income. So with that being said, Denver is trying to get more e-bikes out on the streets. And you may have heard about this, but we launched our e-bike rebate program back on Earth Day, April 22nd of 2022. Our rebate program provides $400 for all Denver residents. So those are folks that are non-income qualified, but that rebate level actually jumps up to $1,200 for income qualified Denver residents. In addition, there's a $500 adder for e-cargo bikes, and this is a point of sale rebate. And so folks apply for a voucher online, they get that voucher and they take that to a participating bike shop, and they are immediately discounted that price from their particular e-bike. Now, worth noting is that on May 11th, the program reached capacity and is not accepting additional applications at this time. It was so successful that in less than 3 weeks, we received more than 3,000 applications, 40% of which were from income qualified residents. We will open the application again for limited rebate releases as funding is available throughout the year. And we encourage Denverites to sign up for notifications for when our application is live again by going to the link here on the screen, denvergov.org/ebike. And just a quick update, as of this morning, more than 800 e-bike vouchers have been redeemed by Denverites, with 56% of the program's funding going to Denverites earning a low income. So I mentioned with our e-bike program, there are about 20 participating bike shops as of today. You can see those on the map here on the right, spread out throughout Denver. And we continue to add new ones. Particularly, we're looking to fill some of those gaps that you see in Southwest Denver and Southeast Denver so that we can serve all the residents of the Mile High City. So Denver's e-bike rebate program, I think, has been successful for a number of reasons. First, it includes nearly all electric bike designations. And so if you're familiar with electric bikes, they have different classes. Our program includes class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes, as long as they don't exceed the power ratings of 750 watts. Second, our program focuses on electric bikes that riders can actually use for utility purposes. So picking up the kids from school, buying groceries, getting to work, etc. Full suspension electric mountain bikes are specifically excluded from the rebate program. It's not about giving people a fun new leisure toy or something like that. It's about providing car alternatives that can help reduce traffic and reduce emissions. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the rebate is redeemable by purchasing through a number of local bike shops. Sure, it'd be nice to just order a cheap e-bike online using the rebate, but instead the Denver program is helping local businesses that sell e-bikes and provide follow-up service and repair. And for this type of program, we think that makes sense. Many riders taking part are likely new to e-bikes, and so the support of a local dealer here in town that can provide service and answer questions is invaluable. So e-bikes, that's one mode of transportation, and we encourage folks to take advantage of the rebate program. We also have e-bike libraries around town. And our office, in partnership with Northeast Transportation Connections, NETC, and the West Corridor TMA, is offering e-bike libraries in several neighborhoods for free use. The e-bike libraries provide easy access to e-bikes to community members through a simple bike sharing program. NETC operates 3 publicly available e-bike libraries in the Globeville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods of Denver, as you can see on the map here in the upper right. NETC has about 30 bikes between those 3 e-bike libraries where the community can check out and check back in e-bikes as they need. In addition to these publicly available libraries, West Corridor TMA has deployed about 40 e-bikes in multiple affordable housing communities for use by residents in some of Denver's neighborhoods, including Sun Valley, Lincoln Park, Sunnyside, Highland, and 5 Points. So e-bikes, number of options here for folks in Denver. What about e-car share? For those that aren't familiar, car sharing is an innovative solution to mobility in cities where residents may not be able to afford or don't want to own a car, but can subscribe to used shared vehicles instead. Denver is fortunate that local nonprofit Colorado Car Share calls our metro region home and works to provide car sharing as a service to empower those Denver community members. In August 2020, CASR funded 7 new electric car share vehicles and 6 EV charging stations to improve mobility in under-resourced communities throughout the city. You can see those EV charging stations and the associated car shares here in the map on the screen. And the vehicles are managed by Colorado Car Share, which also provides subsidized memberships for residents of these particular areas. Income qualified residents can sign up for the discounted memberships by visiting the link on the screen here, carshare.org. Another thing that we're really excited about in the electric car space is our Mont Bello connector microtransit service. So a little bit of background. In September 2020, the city initiated a planning study to discover where a neighborhood transit service should be operated to serve community needs and improve mobility for residents. Following a thorough review backed by community engagement and in coordination with the Regional Transportation District, or RTD, Denver chose the Mont Bello neighborhood, located in Northeast Denver. I'm sure many of you are familiar with. In October 2021, the city's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, or DOTI, and CASR launched a microtransit service in Mont Bello. All rides are free and available weekdays from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. with on-demand trips anywhere in Mont Bello and or between the Peoria rail station and the neighborhood itself. The service utilizes 3 vehicles, a wheelchair accessible van, a plug-in hybrid minivan, and an all-electric sedan, the latter of which was purchased with money from CASR's Climate Protection Fund. So those are a number of different options that folks have. Now, what if somebody is looking to purchase their own car or they already have their own EV charger? So Denver owns or operates more than 24 publicly available EV charging stations across the city. Those are represented by the blue dots in the map on the right here. And we're in the process of adding more. The purple dots here represent non-Denver owned or operated EV charging stations. So you can see there's a fair amount in the downtown core, and there are some spread out throughout the other neighborhoods and council districts, but we are working to add more, so stay tuned. For folks who are interested in finding a charging station near them, we recommend going to plugshare.com. You can sort there based on level 2 chargers, fast chargers, whatever one might be looking for, but there are a number of resources that Denver residents can take advantage of and plug in their electric vehicles. Also worth mentioning, what if you don't own an electric vehicle yet? What if you're interested in maybe considering that as an option? So Denver's EV owners interested in charging up at home can consider installing their own level 2 charger to help with some of those costs. The Denver EV Charger Home Wiring Rebate Program provides up to $1,000 or up to $1,700 for income qualified residents to assist with installing a level 2 charger. Residents can use any licensed electrician to install this equipment as long as the contractor is registered with the Climate Action Rebate Program. Also worth noting, I know there are a number of nonprofits here on the call today. Charge Ahead Colorado grants for nonprofits, apartments, condo complexes, small businesses, etc., are available. Now they have a rolling application window, so you want to stay up to date on when you can apply for your particular organization. And I didn't put that on the slide, but at least wanted to add it. You can go to cleanairfleets.org to learn a little bit more about Charge Ahead Colorado and the rebate options and grant options that you can take advantage of there for EV charging. In addition, Xcel Energy offers rebates for EVs themselves, as well as EV chargers. And Denver residents can sign up to participate in Xcel Energy's programs, including Xcel's EV Accelerate at Home program, which I know our next presenter is going to spend a lot of time talking about. So with that being said, I will leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to me and learning about Denver's electrified mobility options. I am going to be happy to answer questions for you at the end of this session, but for now, I'm going to hand it off to Xcel Energy's Monica Rosenbluth. Monica, take it away.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks everybody for being here today. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Again, Sam, thanks for a great overview of the great, highly successful programs that Denver has rolled out. And what a great segue for me to be able to talk about some of Xcel's EV programs. So we have an electric vehicle vision, which is pretty unique among utilities. Our goal is to power 1.5 million EVs in our territory by the year 2030. Currently, we've got about 65,000 EVs in our service areas. We are in 8 states. We are in a big part of Colorado, but we don't cover all of Colorado. And we want to, not just add vehicles to the road, we want to replace internal combustion engine cars with EVs. That's our goal. We want to help our customers save money. We've got charging programs where customers can charge for as little as about the equivalent of $1 a gallon to drive their electric vehicle. And we want to reduce our carbon emissions by 5 million tons annually by 2030 by using our clean energy, and our electric vehicle program is a big part of that vision. So we have launched several customer-focused programs, really trying to hone in on, what people need to make the decision to switch to electric vehicles. We've got a residential advisory and outreach service. We've got EV advisors that will talk you through the best ways to potentially electrify your multifamily building or your small business or a spot that you've identified in your community that might be right for charging equipment. We offer community planning services, free fleet advisory services. Will come out and assess your fleet and help you really take a look at what it would take to go electric with your trucks. Our second goal is to lower upfront costs for customers. We know that making the switch to driving electric can seem expensive, especially, if you're thinking about where are you going to charge? Are you going to charge at home? What are the costs of upgrading my wiring, installing a charger if I want a little bit faster of a charge, maybe than what the charger that came with the vehicle can provide. Sam mentioned some of the city rebate programs, and I'll talk in a few slides about our rebate programs as well that really dovetail nicely with what the city's doing. And as Sam mentioned, we also actually provide a rebate on an electric vehicle itself for income qualified customers. We also have charging optimization programs that do a couple things. They help people save even more money when they're charging their electric vehicle. And they help us encourage people to shift their charging times to off-peak times of day, off-peak windows. For example, in the middle of the night when the wind is blowing, renewable energy is more readily available. That's the best time to charge. So our optimization programs encourage people by incentivizing them to charge during those off-peak times. These are some pictures from some of the outreach and community engagement activities that we regularly put on around our territories. These pictures are actually from Minnesota. We had a similar event at the Denver Auto Show last fall. This is the Twin City Auto Show that took place in April. And I'm happy to report that over, and I think it was an 8-day period, we had 4,400 people participate in our ride and drive events. That's 4,400 people getting behind the steering wheel or getting their bottom in the seat of an EV, feeling what it's like. And you can see our interactive, it's kind of a pop-up garage there. People can look at what the charger looks like, how it hangs on the wall, how much space it takes up. And really it's the action of, taking the charger out, plugging it into the port of the car. It's a very visceral feeling for people. So with our interactive garage and our ride and drive events, we'll be all over the state of Colorado this summer. And it really is a great way to familiarize people and really get them excited about driving an EV. We also have a dealer network in our territory. So here in Colorado, we partner with different dealers, again, within our territory, and we really work closely with these dealers to educate them about driving electric vehicles, what that means, what that looks like, what a customer's charging options can be. We know that, this is a new technology. These are kind of new for our dealers as well. So we really want to be a trusted advisor to them and equip them with the tools that they need to talk to their customers about the features of the cars, the performance, again, the charging options. And, we want customers to have the easy button. We want them to be able to learn about our programs right there at the dealer, and, they can go home with the car and, signed up for one of our charging programs. So it's kind of one-stop shopping for the customer is our goal. So I'll talk a little bit about our residential customer programs. Sam mentioned EV Accelerated Home. That's a very popular one. So this is our charger rental program. Here in Colorado, you can rent a charger from us, a level 2 charger. We have contracted electricians that will come in and upgrade your wiring for you. You can use the Denver rebate to pay for that wiring. You can use our rebate to, pick up any extra costs that are maybe not covered by that Denver rebate. And then we install the charger, we maintain it. And it's for a low fee of $13.29 a month that just goes on your electricity bill. We also encourage you to sign up through Optimize Your Charge. And again, that's our off-peak optimization program. You can choose from one of 3 very generous off-peak charging windows. They're each about 9 hours in duration. So you can get a pretty good charge in 9 hours on just about anything with a level 2 charger. And in exchange, we reward you with a $50 annual credit on your bill. And then of course, our rebate programs. I'll talk about the second one there first, our EV charger and wiring rebate. Again, this is, this works kind of hand in hand with the Denver rebate. If you have excess wiring costs, our $500 rebates can fill those in for you. You can also, if you're buying your own charger rather than renting it from us, you can use that $500 rebate to offset the cost of the charger. For our income qualified customers, we offer a $1,300 rebate. And the nice thing about the coordination between Excel and the City of Denver is if you are an income qualified applicant and you qualify for one program, say the Denver program, you also automatically qualify for the Excel income qualified rebate. So kind of a nice thing there. Lots of coordination between the two of us. We do have a vehicle rebate as well. This is for our income qualified customers only. So again, if you qualify for the Denver income qualified programs, you would qualify for our EV rebate. We'll give you $5,500 off a new EV or $3,000 off a pre-owned EV. So some great programs there that we're very excited about. Those are what we call our residential programs. We also have some pretty great commercial programs that I want to talk a little bit about. That last bullet down there, where it says residential, that's just a recap of our charger and wiring rebate and then our EV rebates. So those are our true residential programs. But right in the middle there, you see something talking about multifamily. We actually categorize that as a commercial program. And what our multifamily rebates provides is a rebate for the charger itself. If you are in a new construction project, you can also receive a rebate for your wiring costs if you're going over and above existing code requirements. So we really incentivize multifamily units, whether it's a retrofit or it's a new construction project, to go electric and provide some pretty nice rebates there. We have a fleet and workplace rebate as well for some of our larger customers. We have a community charging hub rebate if you are an HOA or a neighborhood organization or a business improvement district, and you identify a spot in your community that would be right for a charging hub. We can provide a rebate to help cover the cost of the chargers. And then for our smaller customers, we offer a small business rebate. If you're installing 3 or fewer chargers, 3 or fewer ports, we can give you a rebate for those chargers. And then last but not least, our commercial programs also have a component called our Evsi Services. And this is fantastic. So what you see here is, basically an illustration of what Excel will pay for if you apply for our Evsi program. So you can see everything kind of in green there. The meter, the cabinet, the panel, the conduit conductor, everything up to, where you go to plug in the charger. We call that EV supply infrastructure. And we pay for that. We will help you design it, work with you to engage an electrician, and cover those costs. And then once that plug is up there, active and ready to go, you could potentially qualify for a rebate for the charging equipment itself. What you see in red there, a line extension, if your project necessitates a line extension, we will give you a construction allowance toward that line extension. So again, we'll typically cover a pretty good chunk of those costs. So EVSI works in conjunction with our commercial rebates. We've had a lot of interest in these programs. We're pretty excited about them. We've got a lot of new infrastructure going into the ground. And again, all of this outreach and education and bringing people into our programs helps us anticipate grid needs, plan in advance, upgrade as needed, and really creates a seamless experience for our customers. So again, thank you for having Sam and I. We're both excited about our programs, excited about how they work together, and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, we'll jump into questions. Sam, I saw you did answer this one in the Q&A, but I thought I'd ask it for everyone. So if anyone wants the resources, they can have the same. In addition to providing these assistance resources for e-bikes, do you know if more time and money is being spent to make Denver a more bike-friendly city? For example, bike racks and safe bike lanes.
Yeah, thanks for reading that question, Katie, and thanks for asking it. I think that we all agree that there's always opportunities for improvement. I'm a cyclist myself. I get around the city using my bike, and at times that can be a great experience. At times that can be a challenging experience. And so, our office focused specifically on the rebate programs and getting money out the door for those resources. But we also work very closely with Denver's Department of Transportation Infrastructure, or DOTI, to make that bike infrastructure happen. And so we have worked with them very closely through the launch of the e-bike rebate program, for example, to ensure that they're also continuing parallel efforts to install more protected bike lanes and make sure that there is more infrastructure in the city. Now, are we doing that fast enough as a city? I think that's going to be hard for me to say. I do think that there are a lot of opportunities in the coming years for community members to provide a little bit of feedback on where we put those protected bike lanes and what that looks like. But long story short, we're working on it. We know that it needs to be better. Me personally, I know that it needs to be better. And it's something I think that we're going to continue to push for as well. So it's one thing to have the rebates out there and fund the electrified mobility options, but we also have to make sure the infrastructure is in place, and we're going to continue to work on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see if we got any others in here. I am not actually seeing any questions in here other than that one right now. Do you guys have any other comments you'd like to make, or if anyone has a question, now's the time to put it in the, the Q&A.
I guess
Sure,
I would. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I might just put one more plug in. First of all, say thanks to Monica and Excel for doing all the work on the EV front. That's something that we're really excited to see. We are happy to partner with a utility like Excel that is so forward thinking. And so I think we're really fortunate in Denver that we have a utility like Excel, which is launching these types of programs. And so I think I just want to mention that. Also, I'd like to mention just very briefly that Denver's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency is working on creating programs focused specifically on nonprofits. And we're talking about things like EV chargers, EV fleet electrification, that kind of stuff. And so in order to complement the funding that Excel has been providing, we're also looking at designing programs along those lines. So for folks specifically on this call, I know there's a lot of nonprofits, some I think we've been talking to about this particular idea. Stay tuned. By the end of this year, we hope to have a little bit more information on that front, and I would encourage you to actually sign up for our newsletter so that you are the first to know when we launch those programs. And so you can go to denvergov.org/sustainability, and there's a newsletter sign up there. Just electric vehicles, and you will be the first to know about when we launch those new programs from the city side. So in the meantime, Excel is doing a great job. Take advantage of those rebate programs, but we are also going to try to launch something to complement some of those programs and pick up a little bit more of the cost so that we can make this a reality for a number of nonprofits here in the Mile High City. So I'll throw a link in the chat, and I would encourage you all to stay tuned for that. So thanks again.
And just real quickly, Sam, thanks for the kudos to Excel. And again, what a great example of a partnership between a utility and a municipality. And as you know, Sam talked about, we're looking to fill in the gaps between our programs, the Charge Ahead Colorado grant program, you know, and really clean up Denver's air. It's been a decades-long issue. Certainly emissions regulations have helped, but it's exciting to see how much momentum there is behind the move to electrify transportation in our area. So thanks again. Excited to have the opportunity to talk to everybody and hear what everybody else is talking about as well.
Great. Well, thanks both of you. Since I have no further questions, we'll conclude a little early, and I'll get a little extra long break before the end. Our end of day discussion will be in Zoom link 1, which will be put in the chat now. Thank you again so much, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is, I'm gonna say the the name of the session so everyone makes sure you're in the correct one. This is session B2, Outdoor Spaces and Environmental Planning, Air, Water, Trees. And it's gonna be running from 10:15 to 11:15. And we'll be hearing from 3 presenters. So first, we'll be hearing from John Novick with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, who will be presenting on partnership opportunities in water quality and gray water. He'll be followed by William Oberman with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, who will be presenting on Denver's 2022 Air Monitoring Network. And then our third presenter is Kim Yuan Farrell with the Park People and Denver Digs Trees, who will be presenting on Denver's tree canopy coverage, what it means for our environment, and low to no cost trees for NPOs. And again, we'll be following the same structure as before from the other sessions. So we'll be going through the questions at the end of our Q&A time. During the Q&A, we'll go through the questions in the order they were received during the presentation. And then once we go through all those questions, we'll open it back up for a discussion. So with that, I want to pass it off to John.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Novick, and sorry, let me just share my screen here. Can everyone see this? All right,
Looks good, John.
Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, I'm an environmental programs administrator with the Department of Public Health and Environment's Environmental Quality Division, where I work on water quality and gray water programs. And I want to talk today about some partnership opportunities that we have in our water quality and gray water programs. But before I do, I want to give you a little bit of background on the work that we do, and then I'll dive into some resources that we have for working with nonprofits, talk a little bit about potential partnership opportunities, as well as give some examples of the type of partnerships that we have done in the past. So the Department of Public Health and Environment has monitored water quality in city streams and lakes since the late 1960s. Today, our work includes monitoring water quality in city streams and lakes, providing recommendations for effective management of city lakes, assessing the effectiveness of actions taken to improve water quality. This includes monitoring green infrastructure installations, as well as looking at the effects of stream restoration projects on in-stream water quality and habitat for aquatic life. We also have programs which promote gray water reuse and which control mosquitoes. Growth in these programs over the past few years has created tons of opportunities for our staff to partner with nonprofits. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that over the next few slides. So let me start with our water quality programs. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. The goals of our program are to look at the long-term trends in water quality. So we're trying to understand how water quality in our streams and lakes is changing over time and what the implications of that is for water quality as an asset for recreation as well as for aquatic life. As I mentioned, we're also looking at the effectiveness of actions that are taken to improve water quality. I mentioned the green infrastructure program, monitoring program, as well as we do to look at the impacts of stream restoration projects. Those are probably the two biggest areas that we look at, but we do sometimes go into other areas as requested by other city agencies. We also look at public health risks associated with recreating in city waterways. Those programs typically are active during warmer weather when people are more likely to get into the water. Our monitoring program components consist of trend monitoring, streams and lakes. Those are efforts where we go back to the same sites on a regular basis, year in, year out. Some sites we've been monitoring for more than 20 years to look at the water quality. And then we can look at the results from that data to understand what's happening long-term. It helps to give us a handle on not only what some of the actions the city has taken to improve water quality, but also what happens as the city has been urbanizing over the years. And that's been particularly important over the past 10 years as the city starts to densify and the amount of green space is slowly decreasing. We also have recreational monitoring programs. I mentioned those typically occur during warmer weather when people are more likely to interact with water in our city streams and lakes. That consists of going to sites where we know people are getting into the water and monitoring those sites to make sure that there are no public health risks. We share that information on our website as well as through an email that goes to city's park rangers, as well as members of the public who are interested. Our water quality best management practices effectiveness monitoring program is that's the green infrastructure program where we actually go out and monitor stormwater as it comes in to those green infrastructure facilities to see how well it's being treated. We also monitor on the outflows, and we're able to use that information to help improve designs as well as demonstrate the value of these facilities. We also have benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring programs. If you're not familiar with those terms, we're essentially looking at aquatic insects, which are more sensitive to water quality than you might see by regular water sampling. We also are doing some in-stream habitat assessment where we're looking at existing habitat for aquatic life. That's a way, both of those tools are a way for us to get a handle on how stream restoration projects affect habitat within the city's streams. The water quality program collaborates with a lot of other agencies. We work with our partner agencies in the city of Denver, in particular, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as Parks and Recreation. We also work with other local governments, wastewater treatment facilities such as South Platte Renew and Metro Water Recovery. And we also work a lot with Denver Water and the Mile High Flood District. We do work with the state and federal agencies, in particular, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Colorado Conservation Board, USGS, and EPA. And we work with them on everything from policy issues to partnering on projects, as well as any other opportunities that come our way. And finally, we work with a broad range of nonprofits in our work, and we are, I'll talk a little bit about who some of those folks are and the type of work that we're doing with them a little bit later. And we're always looking for more opportunities to partner new projects to pursue. And then finally, the water quality program acts as an in-house consultant for the city. We advise city agencies, in particular Parks and Recreation, on water quality management actions that can help improve water quality or address issues such as blue-green algae or nutrients that are impacting water quality in city lakes or streams. And we also consult on project designs, and these can be large infrastructure projects or small facilities like green infrastructure, to provide feedback and make sure that those designs are either functioning in their intent to improve water quality, or to ensure that they've considered water quality as part of their design and are taking actions to protect water quality. Moving on to the Greywater program. This is a relatively new program. We established the city's Greywater program about 5-6 years ago. There hasn't been a lot of outreach about it, so most people don't know that it exists. So what we've done is gone out to get some grant funding to help us raise awareness of the existence of the program and to try and advocate for increased adoption of greywater reuse. That funding will support greywater education and outreach. It will allow us to train people, installers and individuals who are interested in putting in greywater systems, as well as create an incentive fund to advance, to encourage people to install greywater systems. So, and that's an area that we're very actively working in right now, and there are some opportunities that I'll talk about here shortly. So we have quite a few resources available to work with nonprofits on. We have technical experts who can act as guest speakers, and like if you have events or looking just for somebody to come and talk about a water quality or a greywater issue. We have lots of water quality data, which is available to anyone who's interested in looking at it and using it for projects. We can come out and train volunteers if you're interested in setting up a volunteer monitoring project. And we have education and outreach materials and messaging that we can share with. And we are always interested in learning the type of information that people want to hear about, so we can incorporate it into our messaging. We have supplies for things like river cleanups and installation of certain types of gray water system that we can provide to nonprofits to help with the work that they want to do. Probably by far the most that we do with our partners, though, is support for grants. So nonprofits will apply for grants. We'll provide letters of support for their proposals. In some cases, we may be able to provide funding to help with required matches and or in-kind services if the grants that are being applied for allow that. We have many different partnership opportunities. This list on the right side is just an example of some of the things that we're actively working with people on, or nonprofits on, and have opportunities on. It is by no means a complete list. We are always open to new ideas and willing to work with folks, but just to highlight a few of these: education and outreach efforts, lake and stream volunteer days, collaborative water quality monitoring efforts, and policy development are some of the areas where we tend to work with nonprofits pretty regularly. Let me just skip forward and talk a little bit about some examples. I don't think I have time to cover all of these, but I would like to highlight a couple of water quality examples and then talk a little bit about gray water. One of the projects that we have partnered with is on a fairly regular basis is the Greenway Foundation's Clean Water or Clean River Challenge. This is a project where the Greenway Foundation brings together teams of students from local universities to come up with creative solutions which address existing water quality issues in Denver. Things like trash, elevated nutrient levels in streams and lakes, or E. coli. We have a number of times in the past sponsored the challenge. We've also consulted with the Greenway Foundation to come up with locations and potential issues to address so that the students have some sort of guardrails to work with it. We have mentored student participants as well as judged final projects. We also do collaborative monitoring efforts with both Groundwork Denver as well as South Platte Cure. And you can see a couple of other examples here of projects that we've worked on with nonprofits. Moving on to gray water. So as I mentioned, we just recently received a grant to do some education and outreach related to increasing adoption of gray water. And a couple of things that we're working on with nonprofits include development of a library of incentives, door-to-door outreach in low-income neighborhoods to try and increase adoption of gray water in those neighborhoods. And that includes training volunteers so that they can actually install free laundry to landscape systems in those neighborhoods. We do have some existing needs around education and outreach, development of criteria to implement incentive programs, as well as to manage those. That one in particular has funding available. So if anyone's interested in working with us, I'd love to hear from you. So key takeaways here are that we have technical expertise, resources, funding or funding matches, in-kind matches that we can provide. If that's not what you're looking for, if you have some other ideas, please talk to us and let us know what you need. We're always open to new ideas and new ways to partner. So that is all I have.
think William,
Yes.
you're on the call. There you are. Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
Great. Well, thanks, John. Everyone can see my screen, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Yes.
Does that work? Okay, great. Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Bill Overman. You can call me William too. That's great. I work actually in the same division as John in the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. And there I am an air quality individual or person. I focus mainly on air policy actually at the state level, but we also have a monitoring network that we administer for the city of Denver, and I work a lot in that monitoring space as well. And that's primarily what I'm going to talk about today. I'm so excited to be here and glad that we could have this opportunity to talk about what we're doing on the air side in Denver as well. So the program I really want to spotlight, and I think is a great platform for collaboration with nonprofits and your organizations, is the Love My Air program. It's called the Love My Air Network. It was a program that was started through a grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies back in 2018. And the purpose was to work directly in public schools to bring air quality awareness right to those schools. We have 40 schools that are participating in the program. We made our goal and we're really happy about that. So we actually have 40 Denver public schools engaged in the Love My Air program. And they helped us in the very beginning stages here, develop what they wanted the program to even be, even the name Love My Air. And a lot of the resources that we've developed for that program came from a lot of co-development with community members and the schools. So the purpose of this program is not only to just bring awareness of air quality conditions right outside at the school building, but also to pair it with some educational and outreach opportunities. And that's another area where I think, the city is really interested in collaborating more with nonprofits to bring more awareness and education around air quality. So what does our program really consist of? It's really three main components. The key component is the first one is a sensor. It's an air quality sensor, a low-cost sensor that's mounted at the school property or could be mounted at a nonprofit or another facility organization in the city. This one on the top left of this slide is from Prep Academy. We actually had a handful of our sensor boxes decorated by local artists. And that was a pretty neat way to just sort of brand the program for their school. But that's what the sensor actually looks like. It's about the size of a briefcase, a small briefcase, laptop case. And then we take that data that we are monitoring outside, and it's only one pollutant. For those of you who are familiar with a lot of air quality, we don't just look at one pollutant in air quality, we look at many different types of pollutants, right? This sensor is only looking at one, and that's particulate matter 2.5. That's particulate matter that's 2.5 microns or less particulate matter 2.5 or greater in diameter. And that data is streamed real time into the school building. That's that monitor you see there in the bottom left part of the slide. It's showing that for that day when we took that picture, it was green air quality conditions. Thankfully, most of the time the conditions are green, but as we know, with different times in the summer with wildfire impacts and even different times in the winter, given temperature inversions of other atmospheric meteorological conditions we have here in the city, we can get into yellow, we can get into even red air quality conditions, which do impact your health, especially if you're susceptible or have asthma, susceptible to air quality and air pollution. The third part I wanted to talk about was we do have a lot of communication materials already drafted for that school-based program. This is just an example. We have bilingual materials about where PM 2.5 comes from, what does it mean for your health, and what you can do in prevention and reduction strategies. So a brief slide here on just where these sensors are located in Denver. Today, as I mentioned, we have 40 schools participating. We're just thrilled we got that many schools enthusiastic about this program and to participate with us. It's been really positive response. You can see most of the schools are sort of North Denver, Central Denver, and then West Denver. And the reason for that is part of the criteria for selecting these schools was high asthma rates in comparison to the rest of the region's asthma rates, and also free and reduced lunch rates. So we were trying to target schools that were low income and also had these pre-existing health conditions related most likely to air quality. One area that we're really excited about to just launch this summer too is taking all of that real-time data and putting it in one central place. So I mentioned we have our monitors at each school, and then it's displayed inside the school. But now we have an app. You can go download it today. It's called the Love My Air Network app, and it's in the Apple Store, or it can be downloaded for an Android device through the Google Play application. And it will display real-time air quality conditions in our entire network. So that's the fundamental purpose, is just to get that real-time data out to the broader community, whoever wants to download the app. The second part of that tool is to bring out alerts like our ozone action alerts. We've already had several this season, and what it means. I think the state is doing a better job with this too, of saying, okay, today we have an ozone action alert. What does that mean? A lot of people don't necessarily know how that impacts their health or what they can do to prevent or protect exposure. So we're pushing that same information the state is providing on ozone action alert days through our app as well. And our hope is in the future to even add more prevention strategies and information about what you can do individually to protect your health on ozone days or other days where air quality has degraded. Another area I really want to emphasize with nonprofit coordination and work is we do a lot of outreach events. These are just 2 events we had earlier this year. We're planning to do several more throughout the rest of the year. We even got to go to a Rockies game there during their STEM game for high school and middle school students in early May. And we had a really great booth there and a lot of interest during Air Quality Awareness Week. So always willing to come out. We have a lot of materials to provide for any types of community engagement or efforts that are going on, that you're either providing through your organization or know of in the community. We'd love to take those opportunities as well to talk about our Love My Air program. I just want to touch on a couple of other things we're doing with air quality monitoring for those of you who are more into the depth of the science, possibly behind air quality and looking at more high quality data collection efforts. The city's actually doing some of that too. The sensors I was mentioning before with the Love My Air network are really just an indication of air quality. They're not reference level equipment, but we do have a reference level monitor. It's pictured in the right side of this slide here at Swansea Elementary School. That's up in North Denver, just north of I-70. And it was installed there in a partnership with CDOT for the entire length of the Central 70 construction project. It's been there since 2017, an incredibly long time. We've been collecting data there, real wealth of data on all different types of pollutants. And the real purpose of that monitoring effort was to look at the impacts of construction in the neighborhoods surrounding the Central 70 project. So we are compiling all that data now. We haven't seen any major issues with the construction that took place in the Central 70 corridor. but we are certainly going to be doing sort of that longer term analysis of what air quality conditions have been like in the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhoods, and what that is like compared to the rest of Denver. So that data is really great for that. It's just a quick slide on where that monitoring station is. I mentioned it was at Swansea Elementary School. That's just north of I-70. You can see it where that star is. This is actually an aerial showing the highway construction there quite visibly. And then in 2023, the vision is to have a park built over the highway now, where we're all driving below grade. But they're on track to get this park and program completed by the end of 2022. Our monitor will be there for the whole year of 2023 and looking at hopefully the positive impacts of building that deck over the highway. We have many special deployments with our sensors, not just at schools, actually one during the viaduct demolition along Central 70. That was a particularly dusty event. We had some sensors in the neighborhoods and in that area while the viaduct was being demolished, and did find some high hits of dust during certain periods of that, and were able to work with Kiewit, the contractor for that Central 70 project, to enhance their dust mitigation practices. So we do special deployments in those cases, and would always be interested in doing those more with your communities or community members that request that kind of deployment. We're doing several of them right now in other areas of the city. And then lastly, on the air monitoring side, we've done a really neat project in collaboration with our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure on our trash trucks. As they circulate through Denver on fixed routes, we've actually put an air quality sensor right on the roof of the trash truck. And that information was collected over the past year. I think you see in the image to the right there, the map, the kind of grainy map right there, is just a first preliminary view of the data we've collected. It's a large data set, but you can see that West Denver, North Denver are the areas where we see more of this particulate matter pollution. It's not really surprising given what we see in our Love My Air network today, but this is another area from a mobile monitoring arena that we're really looking into and how we can do that more. So I was interested to continue conversations on how we can do more mobile sensing as well. And then one quick slide for kind of my main area of focus and what I do with the department in air policy engagement. I think this is a unique privilege that Denver has to work, in air policy development itself. I work at the state level. There's a lot of rulemakings with our Air Commission around climate and ozone in the next several years. They can be things on building efficiency, which we've heard about in other parts of this conference, but how to reduce the climate impacts of building heating and cooling. Those are some upcoming rulemakings. Heavy freight truck traffic, particularly in low-income communities, and how electrification actually of that transportation network can help those communities, not only in a public health and local impact, but also in climate. We work a lot on Suncor. There's permits up for renewal right now, always working with that facility in particular. Regional ozone and then the oil and gas industry, those are upcoming rulemakings this year and next as well. Ozone is sort of continually an air policy area and always trying to reduce emissions, particularly from oil and gas actually, in northern Colorado to help our regional ozone situation. So I wanted one quick summary slide here on, I've thrown a lot of information at you on everything that we're doing. How can your organization participate? Just a seed for a couple thoughts here. One, let's install a sensor at your organization. We have several nonprofits that we've installed those sensors at and they're working well today. We could put a real-time display of that information in your organization. If you have a building or another partner, we can certainly relay that information either right into your building, or we can actually take that display and put it on a website as well. A lot of education and outreach. It's one of our team members there doing some outreach in one of our schools. We have a lot of materials, like I mentioned before, that we can do those education efforts with, and we'd love to do those more with your organization. Any kind of research, we partner with a lot of universities in our region. CU Boulder, one of our interns is a PhD candidate at CU Boulder. She's doing a wonderful job with a lot of data analysis. Denver University, MSU, UCD, many different organizations interested in our data and what we're doing, and we're working with them a lot to understand sort of the long-term air quality impacts that we're collecting from all of this data. And then the policy end. Would love to have a more direct contact and communication with the local community as much as possible, so that when we go through these rulemakings, we can either represent those communities' opinions better in those rulemakings, or absolutely empower them to come to those rulemakings and testify on their own behalf and be a party to those Air Quality Commission rulemakings. And it's an open process. It's not the easiest process to understand and follow. And we would be more than happy to help organizations understand how they can be involved in policy at the state level. So those are just some thoughts, and appreciate, again, having this opportunity today. I'm happy to take any questions when that Q&A period comes up. So thank you very much.
Okay, great, everybody. This is Kim with the Park People. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome, thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, can I just get a verbal, yes, I can see your screen?
Yep.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, hi, everybody. I am Kim Yuen Farrell with the Park People, and I'm just trying to get my Zoom window out of the way of my notes here. Okay, here we go. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. Kim Yuen Farrell, Executive Director. The Park People is a 53-year-old nonprofit organization. We are a private nonprofit, totally separate entity from the city, though we work in really close partnership with Denver Parks and Recreation, the Office of the City Forester, as well as a couple of other city agencies on our many projects and programs. Our mission is to work with communities to plant trees and improve parks for a healthy, resilient future. So we are essentially Denver's Parks and Trees nonprofit. We believe that healthy parks help grow healthy communities, that our community forest not only makes our neighborhoods beautiful places to live, but provides critical functions to the health, well-being, and sustainability of urban life. And we believe that all Denver residents should have access to these critical urban resources. We also believe in the power of community action and of thinking globally and acting locally. So over the past 53 years, we've infused tens of millions of dollars into more than 50 park improvement projects in the city's public spaces. Many of these are well-known places that reflect the history and character of Denver: Cheeseman Park Pavilion, Wash Park Boathouse, the Civic Center, the Greek Theater at Civic Center Park. And then lots of lesser known sites too that really shape the day-to-day experiences of our neighborhoods. Just to step back a little bit for the context, here in the Intermountain West region of the US, we all know that Denver sits at high altitude. We're sitting here at the base of the Rocky Mountains. As the coloring in the map shows, ours is a really arid climate, and the natural ecology of Denver is short grass prairie.
Hi, Kim. Sorry for interrupting for a second.
Yeah.
We could see your speaker notes. Would you mind presenting full screen?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Interesting. I appreciate that heads up, and I'm not sure why that's happening. I'm just going to back out entirely of this. Sorry, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna restart my share. Okay.
That looks perfect. Thank you.
Does it still look perfect?
Yes, I see
Okay.
Denver. Yep, you're good. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the heads up. Okay, great. So as we know, Denver was originally home to a variety of Native peoples, Apache, Ute, Cheyenne, Comanche, Arapaho. We can see here that trees were really not a significant part of the natural landscape. They were really restricted to riparian areas adjacent to rivers and creeks. But with white settlement of the area brought about the growth of the city, industrialization, and really what made for what was described as a thriving but ugly urban experience. And so in the 1900s, Mayor Robert Speer began really aggressively creating a system of parks and parkways and planting trees to bring beauty and recreation, but also clean air, flood and fire breaks to Denver neighborhoods, and really increase the safety and the livability of our neighborhoods. So today, Denver is home to more than 700,000 people, the broader Denver metro area, home to 2.8 million and growing. And many parts of our city have robust tree canopy. We have a really robust system of parks and parkways, and they bring a lot of really important ecological balance to our built environment to make the city livable. So Denver's 2.2 million trees are really functioning as essential green infrastructure. These urban trees are the air conditioners of our city. They cool our homes, our buildings, our other paved surfaces with their shade and through evapotranspiration, releasing moisture into the air. They are serving the functions of multi-million-dollar stormwater facility, slowing the flow of water through our landscapes and reducing flooding. They're filtering out pollutants from our air and water. They are serving critical functions, mitigating and adapting to climate change. They're sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. They're cooling and protecting the health of the most vulnerable people in our communities. They're protecting the biodiversity of our landscapes, providing habitat for local wildlife, as well as migrating birds and our pollinators. And then in addition to all the environmental services, trees really provide critical economic, health, social benefits to our communities. There are interesting studies showing people are willing to spend more time and money in business areas with nice tree cover. Landscaping of our properties increases their values, pros and cons on that side. But studies also show that trees support the physical and the mental health of residents in our communities. They encourage us to spend more time outdoors and to have active lifestyles. And there's a lot of research about students and workers showing the restoration of cognitive function and increased productivity once they've had breaks that include time outside and around trees and green spaces. Patients recovering in a hospital setting, if they have views of green spaces and trees, they recover faster than those who are just looking at an indoor setting. And trees provide really valuable opportunities. Tree plantings can be focuses for community building and creating social networks among neighbors, and that supports the social fabric of our communities and our capabilities and capacities to cope with and adapt to challenges. We really have a long way to go, though. So there is a lot more room for trees. Here in Denver, the forest is only about 60% stocked. So all the existing trees and the potential places where trees could be, only about 60% of those spaces currently have trees. And the effects of that kind of rapid population growth they're outpacing our tree canopy, driving development, densification, increasing the paved surfaces, the heat, the traffic congestion, the pollution. We have an invasive pest, the emerald ash borer, that has been found in 10 Colorado communities and will eventually arrive in Denver and eliminate 1 in every 6 trees in Denver. So that's 330,000 some trees in Denver proper alone. And our canopy is inequitably distributed. So this is a map of Denver's neighborhoods showing the most densely forested neighborhoods in that dark green color. The lowest canopy areas are in light green. And unfortunately, like a lot of other urban centers in the US, with only a couple of exceptions here, there's a real great disparity in tree canopy coverage between our wealthy neighborhoods, the big dollar signs, which have lots of trees, that dark green, and Denver's low income neighborhoods, the little dollar signs where there are fewer trees, shown in that light green color. These neighborhoods are often also home to Denver's communities of color. You can see the disparity here between Globeville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods compared to the Country Club and South Park Hill neighborhoods. There's just significantly more tree canopy cover in these affluent neighborhoods, and a lot less in the Globeville, Elyria Swansea neighborhoods where there's a majority Latinx population. And that inequity relates to a history of infrastructure and policy decisions that have driven patterns of investment and disinvestment, and that all shapes the canopy and the patterns of where various people live in our community today. And that unfortunately ties really strongly between those areas that are low income and have those populations with that modern day risk of heat. So you can see here the canopy map across our neighborhoods overlaid with data showing urban heat islands that are, the very paved and hard surfaces absorbing and retaining the heat by the built landscape of our city. And those areas, they maintain that urban heat throughout the summer and during nighttime periods, and that's really one of the exacerbating factors that leads to a lot of health problems for our most vulnerable. So you can really just see the stark difference between an under-canopied neighborhood and a well-canopied neighborhood, and what the feel there and that lived experience of the residents living in those spaces can be really dramatic. It shows up here as an almost 15-degree difference, and that's not just uncomfortable; it's dangerous. And we do anticipate, the number of extremely hot days to increase dramatically. As you can see in these projections. I'm going to keep whipping along just for the sake of time. But we really need to be planting and caring for our forest in a really proactive way, and supporting the forest that provides so many benefits to us and our organizations and our communities. So the Park People has a number of programs through which nonprofit organizations and also individuals and schools and businesses can join in planting our forest. We've got resources that nonprofits can take advantage of directly through planting and care services, and also that you can potentially link your clients to, potentially invite your partners and funders to, and also resources that our hardworking nonprofit staff members might be able to take advantage of. We can plant trees at your nonprofit site. So through our Mile High Tree Champions program, we work with corporate and other groups of employees to plant trees at parks, at affordable housing communities, at nonprofit headquarters and other kinds of sites. We ask our participating groups to staff their plantings with employee volunteers and to get the work done and to sponsor the costs of the plantings. And so they get a fun morale building, team building day for their employees. They are giving back to the community. And then our site partners get free trees that will help shade and cool their buildings and bring beauty to their sites. So if you have or know of a site that needs 15 or more trees, please contact us. I also should mention that we've had nonprofit groups partner with a funding partner or a sponsor of theirs to plant trees together. And so they get to get out, get their hands in the ground, dirty, with some really tangible, fun activity together. And that's great relationship building. If you have or know of a site that needs smaller numbers of trees, kind of under 15, or you have clients or program participants who you'd like to help get trees, or your staff members, we can also help here. So the Park People is actually best known for our Denver Digs Trees program. And for more than 30 years, we've hosted this large-scale annual tree distribution through which we work to source free and low-cost trees for residents, organizations, schools, businesses. So each winter around January, we invite folks to apply for trees. We receive applications from more than 800, 1,000 applicants and then go through a review process. We want to be sure that we're planting the right tree in the right place and helping people make wise decisions about where they put these trees that will, in some cases, outlive us. And then we run this big tree distribution. Our goals are really, making sure that trees are accessible to everybody. We want to decrease the tree equity gap and promote species diversity and the species that we're going to need into the future. And then to really engage the community in that work. Trees that would normally retail for more than $150, we provide for $35 throughout the city, or for $10 in the low canopy neighborhoods highlighted here in green, or for free in cases where even $10 is going to be a barrier. This can be a really great source of quality, place, and climate appropriate trees that are free or low cost, and also a wonderful resource around which residents and neighborhood groups and other organizations can mobilize to build community and take on deeply positive projects together. You'll just see more volunteers in action here. And these are 2 Denver Digs trees, one 50-foot hackberry that Nikki Montoya here planted in the Cole neighborhood. And then she mobilized residents like her neighbor here to plant through the program over the years. We're a very small nonprofit. We're really lucky to have a great community of volunteers and community partners who help us plant and steward the forest. We've had volunteers, just community members, but also some nonprofits have sent their staff members or their own volunteers through our community forester training series to learn the fundamentals of urban forestry, and then potentially have those folks help steward the landscapes or the sites that they're responsible for. So I would just quickly mention that is a resource. We're likely going to be doing another round of our workshops starting next January, but feel free to learn more about that on our website. We also have done intensive greening projects in specific neighborhoods or even at the block scale to really customize planting processes and outcomes for low canopy neighborhoods. So if your neighborhood or a community you work with needs a focused planting, please reach out to us. We'd love to partner. And then I'll also mention, I'm about to wind down here, that this summer we're excited to be launching a new urban forestry workforce development program, Tree Force. So we are going to be preparing recently incarcerated adults for careers in the tree care sector. This is a multi-week pre-apprenticeship program, and we will be offering free planting and also free tree care services as well. So, so if you have trees on site that you are concerned about, need some care, feel free to learn more about this program with us as well. And so we have some different resources. And very lastly, we also facilitate the planting of memorial and celebration trees in Denver's parks. And that's been a really neat way that families and individuals, but also nonprofits and other groups have chosen to honor and recognize or memorialize and celebrate individuals or events or milestones in a way that's really tangible and symbolic as well, and hopeful and meaningful. And so you could plant a tribute tree in honor of someone special to your organization. So I kind of blasted through all that really quickly, but all that to say, here's our contact info. Our website has more information on our programs. You're also welcome to email our general line, or my email is also there. Happy to always be looking for collaboration and how we can support other wonderful organizations doing important work. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you to all our presenters. There's a lot of neat projects going across the city. We're now going to be entering our Q&A session. We have several questions in the Q&A chat here, so we'll just go from the first ones that came in. There's a question for John. Do you recommend any low water landscaping ideas for nonprofits? And if not, is there a city agency that provides that information or technical assistance?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that could go into a lot of detail. There's a couple of ways that you can think about this. The first one is, for example, I talked a little bit about gray water, and you can actually use gray water to irrigate certain types of plants. So if, for instance, you were to take Kim up on an example, on taking some of her trees and planting them at your facility, you could also put in, if you had a washing machine there, you could put in a laundry to landscape system that you could use to irrigate the trees. So that'd be a great way to get some shade on your property, as well as to irrigate it with a source of water that's not potable. If you don't have the laundry on your facility, and that's not a great option, there are a ton of other resources out there, and I'll paste some of these into the chat after I'm done talking here. There's a ton of resources on where you can get free planting plans and information on types of plants that you can use that are low water use. Denver Water, for example, has done a huge amount of work on xeriscaping. They have a website called Remodel Your Yard, which has xeriscape plans. It has links to resources where you can research different types of plants. You can get books that have pictures of what they look like. And they also have, periodically, they'll come out with little flyers that tell you, they highlight certain plants. That's probably the best resource out there. But in addition to that, there's a nonprofit called Resource Central, which is based out of Boulder. They sell garden in a boxes, which are water-wise. They're groups of water-wise plants that you can use to replace, say, your yard, your grass with low water use plants. And then the other resource that I would point you to, which is not as useful, however, it's a good source of information. The Department of Transportation's and Infrastructure's Office of Green Infrastructure has developed Ultra Urban Green Infrastructure Guide. And if you look in that, towards the end of it, there's a list of recommended plants that are suitable for things like rain gardens, which you might be interested in putting in on your property. They're good for low water usage, as well as being able to withstand sudden inundations that you might see during a storm event. There are other resources out there. Those are the first that came to mind. And like I said, I'll paste links to all of those into the chat so people can come back and look at them later. But yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Thank you. Our next question is for Bill. Should nonprofits and churches change or cancel events on certain air alert days? And do you provide that information about what levels would trigger the recommendations to limit activities outside?
Well, that's a great question. I think the answer is it just depends on what that organization is probably doing that day. If there's an event that's planned outside and it's going to be a lot of physical activity, perhaps a tree planting, unfortunately, you would say if our, air quality conditions are forecast, we have about a day, maybe 2-day forecast for air quality that you can access through the state's air quality websites. They'll actually forecast that tomorrow will be an ozone alert day or not, for example. But if we have, particularly in the summer, wildfire events that are really impacting us with a lot of smoke, like we saw last year, I would say extreme events like that is something you want to take note of for any sort of outdoor activity you're going to be engaging in through your group. I don't think when it's in more of that yellow area or green area, it really depends on who you're engaging with about whether they want to limit their activity outside. So it's not just the outdoor air quality conditions, but it's also the types of people you're engaging with. If it's more of an elderly population or even a really young population, those are certain population segments, even regardless of their health conditions, that are just more sensitive to poor air quality conditions. So I think those are some considerations you'd want to have. But I guess I'll add a little bit more that we have one air quality sensor outside of the Greenway Foundation's STEM building in Johnson Habitat Park along the Platte River. And one main reason they wanted that there was for their summer camps this summer to be knowing what are the air quality conditions right out here as we have all these kids here at summer camp. So parents and the educators there can know like what types of activities should we maybe be limiting today because of our air quality conditions during the summer.
Another question for you, Bill. Why are the West and North Denver's air quality so poor?
Yeah, I actually really appreciated Kim's presentation where it was, I've seen this so many different times, that West Denver, North Denver, less tree canopy. And some of the slides you had on the air quality impacts in those areas that you're measuring, you know, from a heat standpoint, I guess it's not really, you're looking at the air quality like we are in terms of emissions, but you're looking at the heat differences. That heat impact is also going to impact air quality. So tree canopy is one driver of many actually of why the air quality is more poor in those sections of the city. But there are many, many drivers. There are more industrial activities. There's definitely more freight traffic in those areas, at least in North Denver. And I think, you know, we see those air quality disparities in so many different ways, and overlays with many different environmental factors like tree canopy, truck traffic, and are aware of that. And one reason why that air sensor program kind of just builds that awareness more and more over time.
I think we have time for one more question. Also for you, Bill, have you found any minor impacts of the Central 70 project so far?
Yeah, I can answer that really quick. I think the minor impacts were more in terms of length of time. We did see, I had a slide on our special deployments, and we did them along the I-70 corridor during the viaduct demolition. And we did see some significant impacts in PM, particulate matter, during the demolition process. It's pretty hard to not have dust be generated by such a large demolition project like that. If any of you were in that area of town during that time, it was very dusty. There are better dust mitigation practices that can be carried out, and we made sure that the companies were essentially watering those areas enough to bring the dust down as much as possible. But we did see those significant dust events, but they were very temporary. They only lasted a couple of days at the most as that viaduct was brought down along the corridor.
Thank you. We are about time here. We did have several other questions in the chat. We're going to be passing those on to the fire chat group discussion that will be happening at 11:20. So stay tuned for that. We're taking a quick 4-minute break and we will resume at 11:20 for the fireside chat. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, hello everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started now at 11:20. Welcome back from this last break, and I hope everybody enjoyed all of the sessions today. This end of day discussion will be about 20 minutes from now until about 11:40, 11:45. The discussion is going to work the same as it did yesterday. We're going to ask the attendees to put in the question and answer box your name, the sector you are from, and then something you learned or a talking point that you'd like discussed further by the panelists. They will all come directly to me and I will facilitate the discussion with the panelists, and we'll go through these in the order which they're received. If we run out of questions or we're finished with the questions, we can open up to the group for a general discussion. And this is an attendee-driven discussion, so would really appreciate to hear from you all. So next, I'd like to introduce the 4 industry experts that are going to be joining me as a part of this panel. Got Brooke Pike from Energy Outreach Colorado, Suzanne Satter from EPA Region 8, Kristen May from Excel Energy, and Rotin Liang from Division of Disability Rights, Agency for Human Rights and Community Partnerships. Hi, everybody. Okay. So again, if everybody just wants to put into the question and answer box anything that you'd like us to discuss, or any questions that may not have been answered, you can go ahead and put them in there now. And I think to start us all off, while everybody gets back and puts some questions into that question and answer box, I think we can just go through everybody and talk about maybe what they've learned today. We had a really wide range of sessions, everything from electric vehicles to trees. So it'd be great to hear from the different people what they heard about. I'll just go in order on my screen, starting with Brooke.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. I was in the session that was given by Kaiser in the beginning of the day on building electrification and some of the benchmarking that needs to happen, as well as Excel Energy's rebate programs and beneficial electrification pilot. And then the second session I was in was also with Excel and Kaiser, focusing on electric mobility. And one of the main takeaways I had from electric mobility is I didn't realize how much the incentives seem to be really shifting the market, the uptake, the availability of e-bikes that's made possible. Also working with the local bike dealerships, like I just really found it impactful of how the approach is trying to be all encompassing. Sam mentioned that they're trying to get more retailers that are in different parts of the city that are traditionally underserved, and just appreciated the thoughtfulness that both Excel and Kaiser had as they are rolling out some of these programs together, and some of the synergies that they have.
Great, thank you, Brooke. And Suzanne?
Well, I presented in the first of two slots today, but I sat in on the outdoor spaces and environmental planning, and I was impressed with how many programs are available, water, air, trees, to the community, which is really exciting, and that there's this cohesive work that's being done for underserved communities, which is great when it comes to water, air, and tree canopies. So that's exciting that areas that are most affected by degraded environment are being looked at by these various organizations. So that's exciting. And the fact that there are low cost or no cost mitigation services available to nonprofits and faith-based organizations. So that's what I learned. I'm going to add one more thing. I actually volunteered this year to plant a tree, to be on a tree planting crew for Denver Digs Trees, and it was really great fun. It was fun to see how grateful we went to residential houses, and it was really wonderful to see how grateful people were to have trees and have people plant trees for them. That was great fun. Anyway, it's a great program, and there are a lot of terrific programs available to the community. That's it for me.
That's great. Yeah, I had no idea that program was available, so really exciting to learn. Kristen?
I guess I would say just for the overall conference, I'm impressed and happy to see how widespread the programs and incentives that are available to not only residential customers, but small businesses, nonprofits, and then our income qualified communities. Obviously, this is something that I have been working on for a long time. And so now that we're starting to see the market transformation happening and the interest surrounding it, it's really encouraging to see that. And I think this conference has really highlighted all of the work and all of the programs that are available to the community now.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Roten?
Thank you. Suzanne, I was in the first session that you presented, and thank you for all the information. I certainly learned a lot from your presentations. Something that's stuck out to me is in terms of fashion, 10% of the waste, or 15%. Actually, I apologize. 10% of the CO2 emissions comes from clothes that we throw away. So that certainly has changed my mindset of how I should dress. Go for more classic than trendy, right? But also all the resources that you shared in terms of the food expiration app that we can use to make sure that we're not throwing away good food. And I like your pizza box example of just tearing away the soiled portions, but recycle the rest. So I thought that was really, really helpful. And then I was in the EV charging sessions, and definitely was very glad to hear all the rebates and all the incentives that's involved. And I do want to mention about the installation of EV charging stations. And it's more, I guess, is more on the city side of procurement or enforcement, is when you do put in the EV charging station. I'm with the Division of Disability Rights, so our interest is making sure that access is provided for all. So when you do provide a EV charging station, we hope that that is sized appropriately for someone that is have mobility issues, so wheelchair accessibility. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for that additional perspective. Let's see, and then moving on to the questions. We have a couple in the Q&A, so I'll start. Do the city provided charging stations provide adapters for all makes of EVs? I'm not sure if this is a question for the panel or one of our EV presenters wants to jump in and answer that one. We can move on and come back to that one, unless someone on the panel knows. We'll come back to that one or follow up with you on that one. Okay, do you have any ways to leverage the many agencies' involvement in energy efficiency into some central information sessions that we might make a citywide hub or portal to branch to all the good work going on that we've heard over the past few days? That's a really good big one. Brooke?
I'm involved in the CASR Sustainability Action Committee, the energy one. And so that is, they're called SACs. There's a couple groups that focus on different sustainability energy related issues that just residents in Denver have. And one thing, Ken, to exactly to your point that we recognized is it's very confusing for people to be able to go either as residents or business owners to go to the current Denver websites and really navigate all of the different offerings. As we saw, there's so much leveraging and possibility that happens through all of the funders. And so I know at least through the energy SAC that I'm working on, that is one thing that we had submitted to City Council for approval, and it was approved about a month ago for us to start to develop a hub basically that would be located either on the CASR specific website, portion of the website, or the Denver City website at large.
That's great. So it sounds like we need to stay, keep checking back to the Kaiser website and other resources that are given as a part of this conference to watch the development of that.
Yeah, and I think one of my other takeaways from this conference is it's not just like the city is doing so much, but Excel is doing so much. You know, EOC has offerings, and so I think when we made the proposal, it was really focused on what the city was doing, but I think broadening that would really make the tool effective and impactful. So I will take that back too.
Great, thanks, Brooke. Open it up to the rest of the panel. Anybody have any additional thoughts to add on that one? Let's see here. Another one from Catherine. I've been consistently impressed by the ambitious GHG reduction goals taken on by the city following the recent climate legislation. So much work has taken place so fast. These goals, coupled with Excel's carbon reduction plan, make me really optimistic about a legitimate energy transition happening soon, rather than some ambiguous date sometime in the future. I think that's a good lesson learned from Catherine. I don't know if maybe call out on Kristen from Excel. Anything she'd like to add to that?
I don't know if I have any more to add to it. I agree very much with that comment. Excel has set some pretty aggressive goals over the next several years. I mean, just their 2030 goals are very aggressive, but then their 2050, and that feels very far away when you're talking about 2030 or 2050. But when you're looking at these goals in combination with what Denver is trying to do, it's not that far away. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think we have a really good start so far.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay. We had a couple additional questions that did not get answered as a part of the sessions, but I'm not sure we have the right people on for them. Let me check. I think so. This one is for Bill. It looks like he's on here. A question on, do you partner on the Highline Canal efforts to monitor water quality or engage volunteers? If you're available.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, this is Bill Oberman with the City and County of Denver. I'm actually in the air group. That was a question for John Novick.
Okay.
I'm not sure if, because he's on the water side. So I'm not sure if he's in the meeting right now or not. I can't really see the other participants. Is he there?
I can't really see him either.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, could you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, do you partner on Highline Canal efforts to monitor water quality or engage volunteers?
So yes and no. We haven't historically done a lot of work with them, but recently they have reached out to us through the city's Office of Green Infrastructure to help them set up a monitoring program on certain portions of Highline Canal. This is the conservancy that we're working with. And so we are helping them by giving them some recommendations on how to set up their monitoring program. And if they ask for it, we will be able to provide them with supplies and resources to get the monitoring done.
Great, thanks for jumping in there. And then I think there actually is one more question for you, John, or maybe it's for Bill while you're still there. Is there an application process for the sensors? How does one acquire one for their building if interested?
Yeah, I think that's for me here, Bill, with Denver on the air side. They probably mean an air sensor. And we don't have a formal application process. We don't have one yet, at least. If you are interested in possibly looking to put a sensor at your location, just reach out to me. and I can put you in contact with the right folks in our group, and we can definitely work about that. My contact info is at the end of my presentation, but if, I guess I do have a chat here. I'll put my email address in the chat right here.
Great, thank you. And as a reminder, all of the presentations will be uploaded to the D1 website as well. So if you miss it or aren't able to take it, you'll be able to find it there as well. Thanks for jumping in on those additional questions we have. We do have a couple more for the panel coming in, I think. Over to Roten, do you have any ADA concerns about access to information and improving mobility issues and improving energy improvement access?
Yes, we do have concerns because currently the ADA standards, which was published back in 2010, does not cover EV, because at the time EV wasn't available. It hasn't been invented, or it hasn't been so prevalent. But the best practice, they have issued best practice and advisories. For example, the recommendation I just mentioned in terms of spacing for parking. But in terms of operability, let's just say, and things that are installed, access for people with disability, I mean, that all that is still applicable in terms of like the reach ranges, clear floor spaces for them. That's all still applies. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks. Another comment we had here, in one presentation, there was a map showing a neighborhood that had a relatively higher wealth, but very low amount of trees. It looks like this is between Quebec and Havana. Does anyone know why this is? That might be a good follow-up question for any presenters, unless they're still on the call and able to answer that. Mark down a couple of those questions as follow-ups to make sure you all get the answers you're looking for. Otherwise, I'd just like to open it up for discussion. Was there any other participants that like to enter question and answers or come off mute, join the discussion?
This is Suzanne. I have a question back to the hub. Brooke, can you describe a little bit more about what you're talking about and what resources would be listed on the hub?
So it would be a landing page that we would want kind of navigated, like if you're a resident or if you are a nonprofit or a building owner, depending on what you choose, then it would load onto the website potential program offerings that you might be eligible for. And so the idea is to consolidate like all of the resources that people are potentially eligible for and put them somewhere where they can more easily navigate and find the information. And then I forgot this portion too. I believe we were approved to have kind of navigators, like a call center available as well, so that people, like, so if people don't have the internet and whatnot, then, or if they are on the internet and it's still like the page is still too difficult, they can call and talk to a person, and the person can hear like their specific needs and interests, and then be able to direct them to, the different resources that they might be wanting to apply for.
Are these basically all energy related questions, Brooke, or energy and allied?
I'm sorry.
Are they all energy related? The basically.
I'm trying to think through them. I believe they are. It was, more focused because so many of the offerings have come through based on the benchmarking requirements and then electrification. like a lot of the different like e-bikes, a lot of the different things that kind of go into that realm. The idea was to put them all in one centralized location. But I could be misremembering as well, Suzanne. I haven't looked at it.
I was just curious.
I can
about
follow up with you. I'm
Yeah,
happy to.
yeah, that would be interesting, because I'm just wondering if there's some links that EPA might have that would be useful. So yeah,
Great.
Let's talk. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Okay, great. Well, we are actually coming up towards the end of our time. Wanted to thank everybody again for joining us for the Save Green, Be Green conference. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us right now. And again, all presentation materials will be available on the D1 website, which is where you registered. You can rewatch the presentations and download the different materials and get contact information for any additional questions you might have. So thank you, everybody.